Hey, this is Jason J. Lewis, Superman from Justice League Action, and you're watching SuperWonder Legacy.
You're strong.
I know.
Are you a sight for sore eyes?
It's nice to have someone who likes you for being you.
It's okay. I've got you now.
Just like in the movies.
Welcome to SuperWonder Legacy. I am Jared. I am here with Britt. What's up, Britt?
Hello, hello.
And today we are discussing the God of Thunder. And, okay, so here's the thing. This is carrying on a theme that Britt and I normally do. A good portion of what we do is fixing DC's gross mistakes. And there's one story that is the biggest bait and switch in the SuperWonder zeitgeist of all time in post-crisis, and that is Immortal Beloved. Oh boy, Britt.
One
Well,
of many.
One of them, but I think it's like one of the most egregious is one of my opinions, and it's the story that I attribute to the whole false statement that it is if Superman has to be with Lois no matter what, ever. It's the reason why so many people called the Tomorrow vs. Superman from Earth 2 an adulteress because he was with Wonder Woman even after Lois died.
That makes no sense. That shows, first of all, that majority of the people don't know how relationships work. Yes, there are some people who feel like they don't want to get into another relationship or anything if their spouse or any significant other passes away, whatever. But first of all, this is fiction. So, there can be multiple relationships. These are, however way they are written. And second, it's just really unfeasible, because you don't know how the heart will attract someone. And,
Exactly.
some people, like I said, some people are. So, this is the one, no matter if they do pass away, that they don't find love, that's a rarity.
And we know Tom King is trying to have that with Diana, which if Britt and I ever write Wonder Woman, that ain't happening.
That makes no sense for Diana, because so she's basically, let me see, she's basically 18, when she meets Steve, and he's already technically supposed to be in his late 30s, early 30s, with his ranking and stuff. So
here's the thing, Britt. In order for you to get to that ranking in the military, he's a colonel, that takes you. I'm gonna Google this. Average age of U.S. colonel. That is 47 to 55.
So Diana is 32 and Steve is 50 something. So he's 20 years older than her.
In the Marine Corps, it's supposed to be, which apparently he is because Tom King can't pick. It's late 40s, given it takes about 21 to 23 years of service to reach this rank. Wow.
Again, I think that wasn't.
I don't think they thought this through, Britt.
They never did. In the golden age, Diana was 19 and Steve was said to be in his 30s. So
what the Bruce Timm is that? So
yeah.
So the thing is so we're talking about Thor and his two love interests, because that's right, Thor has two love interests. And so we got Jane Foster and Lady Sif. And so the interesting thing about this is like it's another couple. So here's the thing, Britt. When Stan Lee created the comic book character Thor, literally creating a Superman for Marvel was one of the motivations.
I'm not surprised.
Which it works, and Thor's like one of those things. And Thor, again, another character that struggles with the dual identity, being a protector of Earth and an Avenger, and being an Asgardian, particularly now, where at a certain point in his lore, he became like the king of all Asgard. So it's like he's doing a lot of juggling his like dual identities, if you will, much like a certain Kryptonian that we all know and Brit tolerates.
Tolerates, sure.
Oh my god, I love the sure. So but yeah, so now and I'll ask you this question when we get to him, because I'm going to ask you which of the two, Jane Foster or Sif, do you prefer? Because it's like with me, it's like it really depends on the story. And when we talk about Jason Aaron's run, I'll talk about some of the dings against the relationship, because here's the thing. There was a lot of backlash for Jane Foster becoming a Thor, not for the reasons you would think. Like it's in some ways for legitimate reasons, and I'll bring that up. But so Britt, let's go over for the 119th time the core archetypes of Superman in one. We always do this.
I guess we have to keep going over it because, apparently with thick-headedness of, the fandom, people aren't understanding who they are and what their, relationship represents. So we have to continue on reminding people what it truly is, because no, it's not eugenics. It's not anything of just power or wanting super babies. It's, I mean, if you actually read, the content of the stories, it tells you. But yeah, we have to keep on reiterating it. So for their archetypes, it's, Diana is this purest divine Amazon. And what that means is she is an Amazon. The Amazons are earth women, they are human, but Diana is the purest form of that, given that she is formed of, earth, soil, the sand of Themyscira or whatever, and the goddesses gave her life. You know, that goes back to Genesis in the Bible when, Adam was given life, the purest form of human. So, to
She is
question
literally an earth woman. She is the most literal example of an earth woman.
The literal embodiment in all of the above. Yes, she is that. And the thing is, I don't know why that has not clicked with the fandom. Even the Wonder Woman fandom, I don't know why that hasn't clicked. And even DC themselves, like you have a story, Alex Ross Justice, and seeing how, Hippolyta recreates Diana when she's dying from, Cheetah, and she's formed yet again,
Exactly.
and it's kind of like, is this not giving you, the imagery of her? Like, why is it that she's put in a box um of just a goddess
Well,
that
it's very simple, Britt, because when you have such a like, I'm gonna say it, religious devotion to a certain character, because let's be honest, these some of these Clovis fans are a little scary. When you have this type of almost religious devotion to this, you're willing to ignore everything everything else, just to hyper focus on your ship.
and that, I mean, honestly, that has been DC's downfall because they are catering to just a specific fan base or, a certain era. And it's like that's not helping. We went over that before too. Yeah, Absolute is still in its first year. It's not even a year and a half yet. So it's very shiny still, still with the hype and everything.
Yeah.
But at the same time, your main line is falling apart. So
Literally
for
falling apart.
so for people to say, "Oh, they should have had New 52, separate from the main line." Okay, it would have been the same thing.
Same result, because here's the thing. My friend Wes from Thinking Critical correctly predicted the absolute universe is going to cannibalize the main universe. And Britt, what did it do?
It cannibalized it.
Yeah,
It
exactly.
really did.
It cannibalized it worse than the creeper.
So,
It didn't even have to lick a window to do it.
wow.
I had to. Because this lady made me watch 2 of those movies, okay?
Come on, Big Jeep ain't that scary. So
It's not scary, it's just disturbing.
well, yeah, it is.
Oh, but Cameron brings up he's been called a Nazi eugenics, all because they ship SuperWonder. Yep. Well, yeah, it's because people have this sort of like, well, remember, those are the same people, Cameron, that when Lois transformed into Zois, they were like, oh, think of all the kids they could have.
Right. And it really is how they're just putting words out there because you're calling 2 immigrants, is a very xenophobic um, way of saying things. Clark is a refugee. Diana is an immigrant. They're both, pretty much categorized as foreigners for DC of America, whatever, like that. So with calling them or calling, you know, the fan base, the fans or whatever like that, or the concept itself, putting it in that derogatory sense, that just makes you look bad, you know. And honestly, it's not helping. And especially with rebirth status quo and how so far deep, you know, Superman's image was during that time and now, and even with the new movie, how in order for Superman to have the human way, which is a an even more tone deaf, way of saying American way, and whether you say American or human, that means being, you know, just well American and average and a normal or what they consider as normal. So any if you do celebrate a different culture or if you are of a different culture, even demonizing Krypton, just otherworldly things is frowned upon,
Well,
and
not only
that's
that, Brett. So there's an interesting example for you. So obviously, Robert and I have talked about the game Dispatch and stuff. And one of the decisions in that is who do you romance? You have Blonde Blazer, who's who's like essentially the Wonder Woman in this universe. Then you have the Invisigal people. Now, the Invisigal fan base has rapidly become the Clois fan base in the way that you think, Britt, in that they were convinced that Blonde Blazer was going to be like an evil Nazi because she has blonde hair and blue eyes.
wow.
Yeah, exactly. All because they were like, no, he belongs with Invisigal. And I go, okay. And then it turns out she is like one of the most good people in the game. So I'm like, pff. But it's like, again, when you
But
have
isn't
that,
she also like
yeah,
her actual identity? She's like brunette or something.
yeah, because at one point in the scene that's reminiscent of Superman, Wonder Woman, of like Justice League 12, she takes off the amulet around you and then she turns. So it's not only the blonde, she's like smaller and less like jacked. Well, she's not jacked, but you know what I mean. She's like a regular woman, and it's like, yeah, she's not even like that. So I'm like, what are you guys doing? But again, if you have that almost religious and almost culty, actually, it's not almost, it is culty devotion
Right.
to a ship. That's what this leads to.
I mean, especially when some of them feel like that's just their life's worth. And I'm kind of like,
Exactly.
you have to understand the difference between reality and fiction. You know, they are characters written by other people, you know, or AI if you want to go that route.
So, Brett,
But
so what you're saying is,
Okay, they're talking about fictional characters. Fictional characters.
I had to. I love that.
right.
I love.
Um so we're going back to this. So the sun god alien.
Yeah. Okay.
Um so he is that is one thing that confuses me too, and kind of like, okay, so the double standard is very much there because
No.
um when chorus talk about, you know, Clark being a sun god, they say the sun god and the storyteller. And I'm kind of like, that really doesn't have any type of ring to it. I mean, it just, I don't know, it just sounds so,
Yeah, it's like they don't relate. So I'm like,
yeah,
what?
like if you want to say the sun god, okay, and then you have the moon goddess, which Diana is named after of, and she does represent that.
That's so
That
romantic.
has
Oh my god.
Yeah, you have the sun and the moon, you know, that trope. But the sun god and the storyteller is kind of like, okay, so is it like just an author? Is it a storyteller as in a liar? You know, I really
Yeah, exactly. Or it's this.
How would you like me to make your life a living hell?
Well, I'm not really ready for a relationship, Lois, but thank you for asking.
That's from the movie, but I didn't edit that in any way. As soon as he said Lois, I'm like, I'm clipping the hell out of that.
and of course you have him as Kryptonian, an alien. And no, it's nothing wrong with that. And the
Yeah.
Krypto Kryptonians, Krypton is not evil, as James
Don't
Gunn
tell
has.
post-crisis creatives, Brett. Don't tell
Right.
post-crisis creatives
Um,
that.
but also, just in general, simply put, Diana is an island girl. Yes, she is a princess, but she does not care for that title. So
Mhm.
I really just relate or, you know, put her as just an island girl. And then
And that's
Clark,
where the Wonder Bat fans get wrong because they keep saying, "Oh, the princess and the prince of Gotham." She doesn't care about that.
right. And then you have Clark as the farm boy. And the thing is, the island girl and the farm boy goes so well because they are both ingrained in nature. You
Well, not
know,
only that, isn't that like a Disney trope where it's like the princess falls in love with the farm boy?
yes, it is.
I'm like, hello, Disney told you why this works.
Right. Um, then they have shared roles, you know, world saviors, moral beacons, and of course, mythical icons. Their dynamic is being equal in power and responsibilities, and also just have that emotional bond and understanding each other, you know, what they go through as outsiders trying to create their own normal instead of conforming to what's accepted
Yeah,
as, you
exactly.
know, what
Everyone
should be
has
normal.
their own version of normal. The problem is, it's like it's kind of problematic when one group tries to shut down other people's version of normal. Now, there are some things like screwing with kids that should never be normal. I'm sure we agree on that. But
Right,
it's like if it's an innocent thing like this, yeah, shut up.
right. It's, I don't know, it's just something that like I said, it's very confusing with you know, some people want to argue. Yes, it's not perfect, you know, at all, and we see that, we've talked about it, but the core concept of it is nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So then we get to Thor and Jane Foster. Now, okay, so this is the thing. It's kind of interesting, Britt, how so you have this character that's like the lowest lane of like Thor, except she's not annoying, but it's like you notice they gave her superpowers, and this kind of worked.
Right. Not only that, but honestly, the way some, you know, god, mortal, hero, civilian relationships work or don't. The writers kind of like they don't put it as that's the one and only, except for but I would say except for Spider-Man because he is a human first and then the hero civilian thing.
Mhm.
He's kind of like in that.
Intended to be that way too.
Yeah, so he can remain with, Mary Jane, but at the same time, it's he can still be with Black Cat. You know, they it's kind of like the fan bases do butt heads, but at the same time, they give a little bit more, you know, breathing room for both romances. With Thor, because he's so from what I can see and what I read, it was kind of like romance wasn't really just a priority
Yeah.
for Thor. So yes, he did have the traditional, civilian love interest, but at the same time, it was kind of like we can take it or leave it, in a sense.
Yeah.
And
By the way, so fun fact, the first time Jane Foster got Thor powers was in a What If comic, which is essentially an Elseworlds. So it was what if Jane Foster found the hammer instead of Thor?
yeah, I mean, it always starts that way. And I mean, even Williamson pretty much admitted that if a love interest ends up with the powers, then that means that they don't know what to do with that, certain character, which is a shame because you have to establish, him or her as an individual before even really just labeling them as that love interest, and that's the problem with Lois because you try to make her out to be this all-star reporter, but then you slip and say, well, she's only this all-star Pulitzer prize winning reporter because she is sleeping with the source, and he's given her stories and very unethical. And then you have her become, the EIC of the Daily Planet. However, they do nothing with that. Like it's not really made a big deal or anything. It's not really helping anything, you know. So Williamson said that they don't know what to do with Lois, so they gave her powers. And even with that, he just did it for fun, but it wasn't really a story being told. It wasn't really going through any type of emotional exploration. Yes, he said it's for Lois to understand Clark better, which we have said, you know, some of the fans say she already knows him, but for a writer to say that she needs to know him better, in order for her to know him better, she has to have the powers, then you are technically, you know, confirming what we already knew is that they have an imbalance.
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. But it's like they'll never admit that. But then we get to, okay, the other Thor ship, and that is with Sif. And they're both like Asgardians and such. And they kind of hint this in the movies, but it's
Very
weird.
subtle.
But it's like they're the ones. So they're the pairing that it's more like when you look at like Superman and Wonder Woman when they're like sparring, if you will.
Right. That was the one thing that stood out when I watched the movies is that Sif was kind of like one of the boys, you
Hmm.
know, in a certain extent, and they are, childhood friends. They grew up together. They know each other. So it's I would say that Sif could be Thor's Lana in a sense,
I could see that.
because they grew up together basically as childhood best friends, within that sense. And then it could be, Marvel's Superman and Wonder Woman because they both have the same powers, the same, um, shared motivations and things like that. So yeah, it can go either way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So it's like, yeah, it's like with these two, these two ships, I don't really have a preference because both of them work in their own unique ways. So I'm like, I like when there's there's like that one like character that is two most well-known ships work really well either way. Cameron says, I only like the ship from a mythology perspective because it is the mythology accurate that those two get together. And if it's like Lois, where Jane passes and she tells Thor, live your life, don't focus on me, if that makes sense. Yeah, exactly. Plus, they've even like hinted at them being together in like the classic comics. So then we get to the power dynamics and equality. As I've said many times before, Superman and Wonder Woman are the epitome of gender equality because neither of them, despite what some people will tell you, neither of them dominates the other. They are both like equal in terms of power and stature.
Exactly. I mean, that is why Wonder Woman was created in the first place. She was to be the counterpart, of Superman, to show equality, to show that, okay, a woman can be a hero too. She doesn't have to be the damsel, she doesn't have to be saved. She can work alongside, the male hero.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and anyone that tries to say that, here's the thing. Anyone that tries to say that this relationship denigrates Diana and turns her into Clark's girlfriend is projecting because that's what Chloe does to Lois. So they're like, oh, it must do it with Wonder Woman. And I'm like, how about you actually read the book? But that's too
I
much
mean,
for these people, as you and I know, Britt.
right, and it's also one thing to argue about, Diana's relationship with Clark and then say, but Lois is the wife. Lois is the love interest. So you're reducing her to just the wife and the love interest, or that she is John's mother, but at the same time, she she doesn't even have any significant moments with John as his mother.
Besides trying to save him in a Hellbat suit, which I brought up many times about how that scene actually sucks.
Right, it was very contrived and jumping the shark. But yeah, she doesn't really have any type of significance. It's basically it was all for Superman's story. It wasn't for hers.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's my problem there. It's like, look, you can try and like winding your a Lois story together, fine, but don't try and make her super. Just it makes her look, again, as I've said many times with like Superwoman, she's Timu Wonder Woman. That's what she is. Let's face it. But
Exactly.
so then we get to Thor and Jane Foster, which again, it's like while while you do lose the gender equality thing, he always treats her like an equal, and that's the thing about Thor. He is one of those characters. He shares Superman's sense of like honor and like devotion. So he is kind of that with Jane, and then obviously when he loses the ability to use the hammer and she becomes Thor, you get that like that flippage, and then she actually becomes Valkyrie later on when he reclaims the mantle. So you still have like where they've been heroes at the same time, but it is interesting seeing how like these two like you bring this up perfectly at the last point, how it flip flops constantly between equal, unequal, but it flips the genders on which one's unequal, because at first it's Thor who's the more powerful one, and then it's Jane who's the most powerful one.
Right. That's the thing is trying to when a relationship, I would say that's why I pretty much said it in the beginning that it was limited because of that flip-flop. You don't have a balance. You don't have, you know, either yeah, you give her powers so they can be on equal footing and can open up different stories, or you keep her as the civilian and you either have to lower Thor or I don't know, you have to jump the shark or Jane ends up in the background. I would say that upon watching the first movie, I can definitely tell why people thought that the relationship was a no-go because yeah, they were trying to give them that. Obviously, they were going to. She was going to be his love interest, but it really was written as just kind of like friends, being friendly, and the romance part was just tacked on.
Oh yeah, for sure. And by the way, so as the person that had only seen the fourth Thor movie, which one do you prefer?
Which Thor movie?
Yeah. Which version? The overly comedic one or the more serious one?
Hmm.
I will say the first one is more accurate to how he is in the
I
comic.
would say, well, if that's accuracy, then I would slap him a few times. He deserved to get humbled.
Well, yeah,
Um,
exactly. Because remember, he was like the favorite son, and then he got shot down to earth.
right, and that's another thing too, is that that is how Lois fans think of Clark. They think that he needs to be humbled and that, he is arrogant like that. He's not. He's the most humbled, you know, he has a little arrogance, but it comes out of, you know, he's the bully to bullies, you know, to the right people,
Oh yeah.
not using his powers, neglecting his power, or taking it for granted, or things like that. He is a very respected, hero. So yeah, again, whatever they are trying to, project onto Clark just to make Clovis work, it really doesn't. So with the movie, I was definitely thinking, mentally taking notes with that. I would say that the first movie being so serious, but it was a little dull. Um, I would definitely give it a 7 out of 10. And
Mhm.
then I did go for Love and Thunder, and I would give that a 6.
That's a
Because it
little
was too
generous.
because it was a little bit too corny, goofy, and it just felt like, okay, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It felt like they were really trying to get with, you know, um, kids, like elementary kids or something.
That's a good way to put it, because what happened is Taika, the director, did Thor Ragnarok, and that took a more comedic take on Thor and stuff, but it was a little more balanced at the time because Taika didn't write the movie. Then what happened is, you know how with Wonder Woman 1984 they actually let Patty Jenkins write the movie? They did that with Taika, and that's how you got Thor 4.
Ah, well,
That's
I mean,
that's how you know
I
it's
would
screwed up.
honestly say it's better than 84 though.
Yeah, it probably is. I'll give you that. But yeah, but so that's kind of so. I say that because we'll have a conversation about the MCU in a second. But so then we get to Thor and Sif, and they're both like renowned warriors and sparring partners, and it's like they have the more comrade like relationship that Superman and Wonder Woman kind of have, and the the interesting thing about like Sif is like, again, the amount of people that don't like promote her enough as Marvel's Wonder Woman is kind of stupid, because she kind of is that.
That's only because I would say that she is still kind of like a supporting character, and the way Marvel and DC, operates is they do have their favorites, and especially if she can have her own like mini series or something like that. But other than that, they will put you in the background. Even
Yeah.
if you are to be a powerful female character, for some reason these writers cannot handle that, and they would rather put you in the background.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then we get to the cultural backgrounds and worldviews of the three couples, because obviously Superman and Wonder Woman, Superman's been was an alien raised human. Wonder Woman's a princess who kind of broke away from the throne, if you will, when her duty requires.
Right.
And it's like they're unless of course you're Tom King, and then it's like she broke away from the Queen to be with Steve Trevor, who is a perpetual stick in the mud, right?
Yeah. That is a terrible, um, you know, way of saying that why Diana left the island. Her, it should always be, whether it is Ares or she's called, as the chosen one or something like that. It should never be about a man, never ever. And especially in 2025 or so, we've far, evolved from that narrative. Um, and to go backwards when Wonder Woman is supposed to be a progressive character really speaks of the backwards mindset that these creators have, and especially Tom King, because he wants to call back on so many, Silver Age things, pre-crisis really, but yet he twists it in a way that shows it was already cringe then, but he somehow makes it even more cringy and problematic, really emphasizing on, yeah, we definitely need to let this go.
Yeah, it's the overly like over it's the one girlfriend that when her boyfriend breaks up with her, her entire world ends. That's the type of like relationship dynamic that a King has created.
And it sucks.
Well, that's a very understatement. But yeah, so with Thor and Jane Foster, it's more of like again. Now here's the thing: Jane doesn't like humanize Thor because it's like, again, he's a god. He doesn't need to be human. I honestly, I hate the love interest humanizes the person, because I think that's when you go a little too far into stripping away the character's identity, as Lois has kind of done to Superman. So I never liked the like human thing. What makes Jane and Thor actually very interesting as a couple is that she's a scientist, so she's used to having everything explained like scientifically, but then here comes this thunder god.
Right, I guess here, and that really goes into the first movie because of how he acted, like the scene where they were in the diner and he
Yeah.
threw the cup down and
Another.
broke it. It was like, okay, this is a culture. I would say this is not to humanize, but it is a cultural difference and a learning experience.
Yeah.
That you can have it that way of okay, or say yeah, just a cultural thing of learning, there are some things that you can and cannot do. But that doesn't mean that definitely does not mean you're humanizing someone. No.
Well, the problem is lesser writers treat it as such.
Yes, they do. And that is showing again how xenophobic or borderline racist, the mindset of creatives that they have.
Exactly. And with Lady Sif, it's like they're both like warriors from a warrior culture, and they have that same like warrior spirit that like defines how they see the world. And I dig that a lot in terms of like that way of like pairing them together, because it's in many ways it is like Superman and Wonder Woman, because they are very, because it's like Thor and Sif understand that like being like godly beings, like protectors, similarly to like Superman and Wonder Woman in Justice League 12.
Right. They have this natural, unexplained sense of duty. They are very much culturally ingrained, So yeah, that is, I would say, you know, with Actually, this is a fun way of seeing how Superman and Wonder Woman's relationship can go into the category of a classic and traditional form if they were, under, yes, they are under DC's umbrella, but the subdivision of being in the same franchise of how they can, integrate together. They can go into that traditional relationship as you think of the, you know, Thor and Jane, or they can, or and can be categorized with Thor and Sif.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by hey, what's up, Luffy? I have such a mixed feelings of this comic book run. The bonding between them was so great, but that ending, yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. The narrative purposes. So, Britt, elaborate.
Okay, so as we said, it's not about eugenics. It's not about them taking over the world or having super babies or whatnot. It's basically telling the story of two otherworldly beings, trying to show that everyone has a unique normal, that, you're comfortable with who you are, be truthful with your identity, with your culture, and just, well, James Gunn, it's certain things that within the fandom has really made something so irritating or cringe. But with Clark and Diana, it is that you are supposed to be kind and respectful and things like that.
Don't tell
But
them.
it is, but not in the superficial way as James Gunn has put it. No, it is something about just being respectful to everyone and giving that love and compassion. And no, not, well, I take that back because some people do take advantage of that and they will do some very questionable things. But you get where I'm coming from. It's basically just be a honest person, and a respectful person. And, you know, and love yourself. Be confident with who you are and your background and your family and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then it's like the interesting thing about these three is like all three of them, if there's a similarity between all three of them, it is beyond the one or both of the people are gods or godlike beings. It's that they all kind of relate to like essentially a cultural exchange. And that's really like a very interesting way to look at these from a narrative perspective.
Exactly. That is actually a good way to put it. It's a cultural exchange that they are learning from each other. It's not choosing one way over the other. And as I said, with even Thor and Jane, it was like if we can't make it work, if one or the other has to change for the other, they weren't going to be together. And that's a very mature way of looking at relationships, learning from it. But, and that's the difference between how DC handles things because we see Clark or Diana or, both have changed their ways for Lois and Steve to make that work.
Yeah, exactly. And we all know that that does not help at all. And we all know that inevitably that it's like that is why I always say, and that's why I said earlier that the whole that Chloe makes Superman less than who he is, because I got news for you. It's like if he has to like downgrade one part of himself to overemphasize another, that's a problem, because no relationship should make you have to hide or not be fully yourself.
Exactly. I mean,
No.
if you like something, um, okay, say if you are allergic to something, then of course, by all means, that is something that needs to change. You need to, you know,
Hmm.
um, help that person feel comfortable and things like that. But if you everyone has um a different taste in music, or they do come from a different culture. You all come from a different family, so it's the way you do things. If I um whether you're an early bird, I don't like to get up in um early in the morning. Just things like that, that people, they learn from each other, they make compromises or whatever, and you know that is just how relationships work. But again, if you have to just drastically change something, completely let something go, that makes you you, then yeah, that might not be the relationship for you.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like again, it's like again, it's like particularly something this important. That's like being in a relationship with someone and saying I can't tell them I'm an immigrant or something like that.
Right, which Superman has done. So,
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and it's like, but both of them understand it. Like now, Jane is one of those examples where you could do the whole, oh, now she understands him a little better because she has been a superhero. I have mixed feelings about her being Thor, and I'll go into them when we get to the Jason Aaron Thor run part. But it's like to give you a preview because they changed Thor's lore in a stupid way in order for her to be able to like use to become Thor.
and that's what we are saying. Don't do that.
Trust me, it's like all right, so let's keep going with that because trust me, Britt, it's like there was backlash to Jane Foster being Thor. Some of it was the idiots online that would be like, "Oh, girl Thor," but the normal people had legitimate because you know what? I'll save it. So then we get to the emotional tone and chemistry, and again, like I said before, reason why I don't, yes, Lewis, that's what I'm referring to, and I'll get into that later. So the reason why I like both is because both deal with the emotional tone and they have chemistry in different ways. Because Sif understands Thor very well because they grew up together. They came up together as warriors, and she understands him that way. Jane understands Thor the man, so it's like Sif understands Thor the god, and Jane understands Thor the man, and it's like they both have done very well together. And here's the thing with Thor comics, as far as I know, here's the other reason why I like both. Neither of them was used to crap on the other. It was the opposite, as a matter of fact. So I'm like, okay, I can like both because you're not using one for an agenda to say you can't like him with the other person.
Right. That is, again, how you know, incorporate all of these relationships. And that's something that DC does not know how to do. Even with Peter, Felicia, and Mary Jane, they, I think they did have their little tit for tat, but Black Cat and Mary Jane ended up, kind of friends, if
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, but DC has a very hard time with trying to balance relationships with, yeah, Lois. Um, she's propped up by even erasing or belittling Clark's relationship with Lana. She is his childhood best friend. At least let him have that with her. If you don't want him to be with her romantically, but she is his best friend, you know, they want to take that away. Um, Lori is never mentioned. much except for Mark Wade because he is a Silver Age fanboy. Diana, we've gone through what they've done to Diana, of her not being important. Again, even as his adult best friend, she can't have that.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
you go to Batman with Selena and Talia. Talia is rewritten to be just downright evil, and even to the point of being an abusive or neglectful mother to Damien, knowing her entire like, yeah, she was going back and forth between her father and her beloved, you know, but once she had Damien, she was a loving mother, and you saw that vulnerability that Talia had.
And then Grant Morrison came in, and his reasoning for writing her as the evil woman was, I forgot the way that like she was written, and I go,
So you
read
didn't
the
go back
book.
to, exactly, you didn't go back to read it. That
That's very
honestly,
Tomasi of him.
right. Honestly, I just think that Morrison, um, because it's too much, racist tropes within that, stereotypes within that. So it's definitely a racist thing going on with
Oh,
that.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
then you have even Nightwing, Starfire, and Barbara Gordon. You have that where even in story where Batman called, I think he said something about Corey, just being an alien or something like that. And I'm like, okay, aren't you best friends with an alien? So, you know, um, and just those little things that you have to destroy a relationship just to prop up another. And you don't need to. And again, this is why I'm an advocate for the multiverse because you can explore these different relationships on different Earths and everything like that. The only person I would say that did that well of the concept of the multiverse was Jim Krieg,
Yep.
in for Crisis movie.
Yeah,
Did he
but again, these people won't allow that because they're too threatened.
if you're threatened by another relationship and or even just in general how DC has handled this where Clark and Diana can't even be friends, that just shows how weak the other relationship is.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But yeah, so then you get to let's go to and now again it's like and now Britt, which relationship is more like it most resembles Superman Wonder Woman? I
Well,
think it's kind of obvious there.
obviously it's Thor and Sif.
But let me ask you this. Here's the question I wanted to ask you. Which of these do you prefer?
Honestly, it's equal because
Yeah, okay. I can respect that.
yeah, it's honestly equal because I can see how you can, you know, write these two relationships in a very respectful manner. And it is where Thor is learning something. As I said, Jane Foster, she is kind of like his Lana. Well, no, I said Sif is his Lana,
Mhm.
but I would say that Jane, she isn't the lowest at all. I would give her maybe Lori. I would give her Lori's spot. And
Yep.
then I would say that Sif goes into a mixture of Lana and Diana.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. But yeah, but it's like either one works for me. Again, a significant part of this is neither one is used to shot on the other. That
Right,
is very key here.
right, right.
But it's like, yeah, so that's why I'm like, okay, and Jane, as opposed to Lois, never ever degrades Thor or makes him less of the god that he is. So I'm like, okay, there you go. I like that a lot. I definitely like that a lot. But it's like obviously from a surface level, Thor and Sif is the more Superman Wonder Woman like relationship.
Right.
But so then you get to, so tell us about the history of Thor with Jane Foster.
Okay, so this started in 1962,
Mm-hmm.
and this is basically the nurse and the god. Jane, she first appeared in Journey into Mystery, issue 84 in 1962, as a nurse working alongside Dr. Donald Blake, which is Thor's human alter ego. I did not know he had an alter ego, and it's so funny. First of
That's
all,
why
the
in Thor
name,
1, when
yes, I did
yeah,
see
there you
that,
go.
where the name tag of,
Mm-hmm.
she said, her ex's t-shirt. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, that's pretty cool. But first of all, I don't know where Donald come from, but it's so like Donald Blake. That sounds like a fake name. Like,
Stan Lee was creating names, so that's kind of
I
where
mean,
you
you
have
might as well like go ahead and let him have on those, those goofy glasses with the nose, with the fake nose. You might as well just let him wear that, because
and the
Donald Blake,
mustache and the really bad fake mustache, yeah.
yeah, because Donald Blake is just not the name that what? Like, you could name him Thor Theodore or something. Like, you couldn't think of anything better than Donald.
So,
What?
right. So for amalgam, do you know what the amalgam Thor's name is?
Do I want to know?
Thorion, because they merged Thor with Orion. That's silence. That's the thing about amalgam. Some of them, it was like, okay, cool, you have Super Soldier because it's Captain America and Superman. But it's like some of them were like, when you have Doctor Doom and Doomsday, Doctor Doomsday, or Doctor Fate and Doctor Strange Fate. And I go, one side wasn't very creative.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, so actually, I believe the way this used to work, Britt, is so Dr. Donald Blake found the cane, and then when he hit it on the ground, he switched places with Thor. At least I think that's the way it worked. But yeah, so yeah, Thor in the Silver Age. It was also done because Jack Kirby, who was the artist on this, was a massive mythology fan. By the way, Jack Kirby is also the guy who created all the new gods.
Right.
Yeah, so continue.
Okay, so now we have, well, basically, the early dynamic is the weird alter ego name and, the longing, basically the trope that Superman had, with the, I would say the triangle of two, Clark Kent, the dork guy, ignored and treated bad, and then you have the hero that's longed for, or have that infatuation. However, Jane did admire Blake's kindness. Yeah, I can't name him Donald. So Blake, we're gonna go with Blake. Blake's kindness.
Oh God.
But she did, like Thor's physical power. So it was basically like she loved the heart and the power, but she didn't know that it was the same man. That's the difference between Jane and Lois. Lois couldn't stand Clark even being kind, but she was infatuated with Superman having the power. And of course, Blake did pine for Jane, and but that it seemed like it was something forbidden. Then, so yeah, it was basically a forbidden love with the dual identity, and the human in awe of the god.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
Dave has another name for Thor, John Thorman.
I would take that too. Like,
remember, this was created by the guy behind Peter Parker.
Even that, yeah.
Or let's not forget a member of the Howling Commandos and someone under Captain America's command, Dum Dum Dugan.
Lord.
That's his name. Or the dragon, Fing Fang Foom.
I mean, I don't know. That ain't.
I love how Britt started to explain it, but she's like, no, I'm out.
Yeah, I can't even. Wow. Okay. So so we get to their departure, the rejection. She does learn they are one and the same,
Okay, yeah.
but basically it doesn't work out, because they are culturally different. And I mean, that is how pretty much the Silver Age, Golden Age, Silver Age type relationships was you have this long sense of pining and yearning and stuff, but it just does not work because after all, this is a civilian and you want them to be protected, but at the same time, that understanding isn't there. So then you go to the Bronze Age, which was Jane is a doctor. She was married, you know, um, she was caught in Thor's, orbit with his ventures, but their romantic tension, it was kind of um there, but not. It wasn't a focal point.
Yeah, exactly.
It really didn't get, kind of revived or so until I would say around the 2000s. So we're at the modern times. And this is where she does become, more of a love interest again, a focus point. She's a doctor, um, and she does, humanitarian work a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gearing more towards the morality sense and that sort of understanding of basically his goal, I guess at that point of trying to connect with people. So they had Jane be more connected, with her patients and things like that. And then we have Jason Aaron's era of the Mighty Thor. So I don't know much about that. So you can explain that.
I gotcha.
Mhm.
So what happens is, okay, so this follows in, I'm going to recount the story as best I can because as you see, I got books.
Wow.
So it starts with Gore the God Butcher. Yes, it's the story that Love and Thunder was based on, only the comic is way infinitely better. So point is, at one point, Thor is fighting Gore, and then there was this attack on Earth, and Thor essentially is in a battle, and someone's the gods do something shady, and then Nick Fury leans over to Thor and says, he was right. The gods are, you gods all the same. And then Thor can't lift the hammer anymore. He's unworthy. And this leads to unworthy Thor. Now, they made it, because here's the thing about Marvel at this point. They were doing what's known as all new, all different Marvel, where they replaced literally most of their cast with characters that were meant to be more diverse and stuff. And that's, let me put it this way, there's nothing wrong with wanting more diversity in comic book characters, as you and I have said many times, but don't replace what's already there. Come up with your own characters. So with Thor, it's like, okay, so Jason tried to make it like more in the first book, which is called, hang on, it's called Who Holds the Hammer. It was a mystery of who this new Thor is. And what this would eventually lead to is Jane Foster. And Jane at this time had, and actually in this page right here, she had just been diagnosed with cancer. And she's going through chemo treatment. But the way that the powers work is that, so she doesn't have cancer whenever she becomes Thor. but every time she undoes, her cancer gets worse because the hammer is undoing all the chemotherapy she gets. So that's like a big like problem, because she's like, I'm using that. So I'm Thor. I'm supposed to be protecting everyone, and I'm dying every time I don't be Thor anymore. And then obviously, so here's the problem with this. Here's where the actual Thor fans had issues with this, Britt, because Aaron essentially said, "Oh, Thor's name is not Thor. It's just Odin's son. Thor is a mantle." That's like saying, Britt, if you have my glasses, you then become Jared. And I go, bro, that's not how that works. And that was the problem. And then they did use this around the same time to like shit on like Odin's son and stuff. So I'm like, that's where the fan base has the issues. We have to fundamentally change lore in order for this to happen. I'm like, no. And here's the other thing. This screwed over Marvel Comics, because here's the thing. This was coming out around the time that the Thor movies were coming out, and everyone was great on Thor. They were like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great! I'm gonna go buy a Thor comic. Bring me a Thor comic." You go to the comic book store. Who's this girl? Where's the guy that was like in the movie I just saw? And then it's well documented that led to people to like a lot of missed comic book sales, because new comic book fans that come in from the movies want the books to reflect the movies. And it wasn't just Thor. They did the same thing with like Iron Man with Riri. But it's like, the thing about it is like, if you're trying to get more people into the comics because of the movies, great idea, mind you, you can't have it look drastically different than the movies.
Yeah, this
tanked Marvel, Britt, because at the same time, DC Rebirth / the early part of the new the middle part of the new 52 was happening, and this was one of the few times when DC was outselling Marvel. That's how bad it got.
I would say the thing is, it goes both ways,
Exactly.
What DC did to basically crash themselves was the synergy between, Rebirth and DCU. And the thing is with that is what they chose to synergize was awful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But all I'm saying is like, it was around this time Marvel sales, like, because that's when Marvel will take notice, because swiftly thereafter all of this was undone. Now, how did that get undone, you may ask? They did what is probably one of the best Marvel events of all time, called War of the Realms. Hey Britt, remember how I'm always thinking, here's a great idea for a comic book. The gods go to war with the Justice League. It's basically what they do here, except like the like 9 realms. Malekith, who is like a dark elf, and he's the villain on in Thor 2. He invades, so Thor has to go fight him. And then this is the moment when like Jane dies, and Thor reclaims his mantle as Thor. I'm just going to call him Thor. I'm not calling him Odin's son. But then it's also revealed that she's brought back to life by magic, but the magic also heals her cancer, so she doesn't have cancer later, and that's what the resurrected part is. And then she later becomes Valkyrie. Now, the thing about Valkyries in Norse mythology is that they come about when you're like dead. So it's like there was this one time in the King in Black event from Marvel, which is spectacular, by the way. She's hovering over Eddie Brock because he's on death's door, because she's like, yeah, he's about to go, so we need to figure out how to bring him back. But so then you get then Aaron concluded his run with King Thor, which is essentially him like showing what happens when Thor is like is like finally king of Asgard. But by the way, I want to ask a little question here. Russell Dauterman as an artist, because he did like all the Thor books. I know he's exclusive to Marvel, but I'm imagining a Wonder Woman book drawn by this man, and my God, it looks beautiful.
Yes, I would not oppose at all.
It's like, because he draws women extremely well. Now, and again, this is the and now here's the thing. Jason Aaron, before he left and came to DC, would also ruin the Punisher character. So there's like a little bit of a that's why I was so cautious when he came to DC. Luckily, I've liked everything he's done at DC. But it's like the point is with this was when this is why the Aaron run, as Lewis says, is like the black sheep of the Thor runs, because it's like when you have to do this, like when you have to change the character's lore surrounding their freaking name, that's when it starts to be okay. For lack of a better term, Britt, this is the proper use of the term woke.
I see. Mm-hmm.
This is what they mean. Now, Britt, do you understand a little bit better why this run got backlash and stuff?
I mean, yeah, it is some things that's kind of like, okay, yeah, that's a little questionable.
Now,
that still doesn't.
Let me clear. I read the story. The story itself of Jane Foster, like her dealing with like the cancer stuff and the hammer and her being Thor. That's a great story. I liked it. It's just the reasoning for it existing is the problem.
Right. It's things like that. It's like if you have to go, with a whole bunch of contrivances and ruining other characters and all of that, then yeah, the story deserves the criticism that it gets. If you are just saying, the Thor, well, just the idea of Thor has to be just a man or whatever like that, and just going a little bit overboard, then no, that those types
but again,
of criticism,
it's his name. It's actually his name is Thor Odinson. So
right.
That's the problem here. Now Lewis asks, what did Jason do to the Punisher? Oh boy. Oh boy. So this was around the time. So before I say this, I need to clarify something. January 6th had just happened. I need to clarify that. And there were pictures of people there with Punisher skull patches. So the first thing Marvel did is they tell Jason Aaron, change the logo. You know that iconic logo that's worn by like the military and law enforcement, the good ones? That's like one of the most iconic logos of all time. Change that and destroy it. And they made a really crappy logo. Then they gave the Punisher superpowers, essentially. And then okay. Britt, how much of the Punisher's origin do you know?
I don't.
Okay, so Frank Castle was so when he was created, he was a Vietnam vet, but I'm just gonna assume he's a war vet, and he comes home and he becomes a cop, and he's like, the way he should be is he is like a good father and a good husband, and he wants to like do well by his kids, and he and his family were having a great thing, and then at one point, Frank's family is killed by mobsters, and they get the mobsters who kill his family get off on a technicality. So he says, "Oh, the justice system is corrupt. I have to take matters into my own hands." So he becomes the Punisher. Now, okay, this is what Jason Aaron did. So he retconned, as he's well to know. It's so not only was the Punisher was, those kids that grow up to be serial killers by harming animals?
Yeah.
He basically did that with the Punisher by making it so like he may have actually killed someone as a kid. And when he came back from the war, his wife is going to divorce him because he was going through massive PTSD stuff and he was abusive and he was a horrible father. And I go, okay, since when? Okay. And then his wife legit basically banishes him to a shadow realm, and then Marvel replaces him with a guy named Garrison, gave him literally the exact same goddamn origin as the Punisher, but it's fine because he's not called Frank Castle. And then the fans literally freaking hated it, and then Marvel just brought Frank back to his, for the most part, former glory, because the Daredevil show came out and everyone loved John Berthel as the Punisher in that show.
That's too much.
Yeah, exactly. That was when I was like, oh no. That was what made me weary about Jason Aaron coming to DC. Luckily, it turned out very well for me, but that's why I always say, that's Marvel. That's why I always say, Britt, any problems that you have with DC editorial, Marvel is infinitely worse.
I mean, because I'm a former fan of DC, I'm still going to be harder.
You're still a fan of DC. You're just not a fan of the way DC is being utilized. We've clarified this.
So former.
No, let me put it this way. I'm a fan of DC, but I don't like the way they're being used. I still call myself a fan. Hey,
I mean,
Britt.
You are still...
Britt, I hate to break this to you, but you're the co-host of a DC podcast.
I mean, of a very specific, thing.
You're not escaping this, lady.
So, no, I didn't work my way around it.
Right, fine. But Dave basically summed up it. Is like they showed their disdain for the military and police. And I get that people that you don't like had used the logo. That happens. But you don't like just, and it basically, again, for Marvel is the petty publisher. You know why? Since they're number one, they're like, oh, they'll still buy it because there is a group affectionately called the Marvel Zombies, and they'll buy Marvel no matter what. So it's like, that's why Marvel feels very brazen about screwing with these characters and pissing people off. The reason why they brought Frank back to his former glory is because this is the one time where synergy actually helped. Also, the man ruined She-Hulk. Oh boy, Britt. There's so much I can tell about this one. So what they did is, Jason Aaron was running Avengers, and as part of his Avengers run, so Jen turned into She-Hulk, but she turned into basically the stupid Hulk version where she just referred to herself as Hulk. So basically, he turned She-Hulk into just Hulk with boobs. Fans hated that, obviously, because part of She-Hulk's thing is her sex appeal. I'm sure you've seen a picture of She-Hulk. And
yes, I have.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then it's like, the other thing is like, he made it up like Jen hated turning into She-Hulk, or like one of those things. But I'm like, she legit said she loved turning into She-Hulk, and he made it like that, like the other version of She-Hulk was like problematic and like should not be like held up. And then he had Thor date like She-Hulk, and I go, what are you doing, bro?
I guess they definitely ran out of ideas, wanted some type of PR thing, or was just high.
Well, here's the thing. All of those are true with Marvel at this period, Britt. So it's like, is it all the above? Check. But that's the problem with this era. Now, again, when you actually read the run itself, it's pretty good. It's just, if you ignore the motivation behind behind these very weird changes, it's actually pretty decent. So the run made Jane like more of like, also in Marvel Comics at this time, Jane was dating Sam Wilson, Captain America.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen seen the actual panels and art of stuff for that. Yeah, they did that.
I just the only thing really that's shared is Alex Ross cover.
Yeah, it was that. But yeah, but again, it's like, I like the story he did with this, and he did elevate Jane Foster instead of like being like the love interest in the powers. Now, Britt, you know what's kind of interesting? This worked, but Superwoman doesn't. Isn't that funny?
Superwoman doesn't work because they don't have an actual story. It's just, as Williamson said, it's just for fun. And it's, you know, it's Jane, I would say that she actually had a story to tell with being who she is as a doctor, and wanting to connect with people, and also the fact of giving her that storyline of cancer. Um,
And
so,
not only
so
that, being a scientist and now living in a world of magic.
right, so that works. Lois is just a reporter. Like that's it.
Mhm.
You're glorifying basically what I mean. Reporters matter with getting news out, but half the time, especially in 2025, you're
They're
getting your
lying.
news. They're right. They're lying. That you're getting your news like from social media and just random people,
Well, even on
bystanders.
that, with like bots and AI, you never know if even that's the truth.
Exactly. So I mean, you know, she's not, again, as I said earlier, very unethical. She uses Clark to get stories. Yeah, she's nosy and everything, but again, it's still more so contrived just to be in the know of Superman, and the fact that he is the one that she gets most of the stories from. And you know, even Greg Rucka said because she is the wife of Superman, she has connections. Oh, so if she wasn't his wife, she wouldn't have connections. You know, it, certain questions that you have with this.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like what's kind of funny is again, it's like remember when they tried to say that Superwoman was gonna be a mystery of who she is, and then literally the next day they're like, it's Lois.
Right.
I'm like, bro, really? Oh, Cameron also says, also we have Vicky Vale, Iris West, Linda Park, Kat Grant. I'll even say G. Gordon Godfrey. So Lois really has nothing going for us. But remember, it's like even when Rucka did that Lois Lane book, it flopped hard.
It flopped because, I mean, it flopped because no one cares for Lois, as even if Twitter wants to say otherwise. But also, it, it seemed like even Rucka got bored with it and wanted to write the question.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But it's like even with that, it later turned into a question book because Rucka's incapable of writing characters unless they're lesbian.
True.
Yeah, so I'm like that's a pretty interesting handicap, bro. But overall, the Jason Aaron run, now that I've read it, it's actually pretty solid. Again, if you ignore all those other stuff, it's like on its own, the story it's telling, okay, it's pretty cool. And again, Russell Dodderman's art. Can DC try to poach him when his exclusive contract runs out because he needs to draw Wonder Woman? Look at the top right image.
Yeah, true, true.
So then we get to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and this is where we get to like a big exposure to a lot of people with Thor, because all right, so I've talked about Brit somehow being able to tolerate Thor, love and thunder, which I still don't know how that works, but the thing about like the Thor movies is okay, 1 and 2 are my favorite because as you know, I like the movies that kind of take themselves seriously because they were trying to turn Thor into Deadpool in the latter 2 movies and you can't that's not who the character is.
Right. I mean, I don't know, for some reason, I think it was the MCU trying to get a different crowd. And you can tell when people, they want the comedies, they want the goofiness and everything. But at the same time, I guess it has to be a right timing of things
Mhm.
because, yeah, at that moment, you know, the MCU did start to have its downfall. And then, of course, being reactionary, WB and DC tried to do the same thing, and they really just fell to the abyss.
Yeah. Fun fact, did you know that Thor 2 was almost directed by Patty Jenkins?
I did know that.
Which I'm like, I could kind of see. Well, here's the thing: is she gonna write it? Because we all know her writing sucks. But it's like she directs it. I can kind of see her with that. Yeah, and Dave brings up that Thor 2 is very underrated. It really is. It was criticized for being too dark, but I'm like, and it's because here's the thing: Guardians of the Galaxy came out, and now and Marvel like essentially learned the wrong lesson from that. That's why every single Marvel movie after Guardians has the stupid humor that we all think is cringe.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not fair that, if it wasn't for being the height of Marvel, you know, I really don't think Guardians would have been as quote unquote successful as
It
it
wouldn't
was.
have even been greenlit because, again, that's why people trusted Marvel. So whenever anyone brings up, oh, it's fine that gun is starting with useless characters because it's like he did Guardians, and I go, that was only done because Marvel was at a point with the audience that they had audience trust. They see the Marvel logo, they will go see it. DC doesn't have that.
Right. I mean, DC doesn't have a lot of things. I mean, I know that Marvel has issues, but I mean, at least they has um had a cinematic universe, even if it is stumbling, tumbling, and everything, you
Oh,
know.
it's falling down the stairs at full speed right about now.
But DC hasn't even, been successful with their first universe, basically tumbling after the first half of it. And then
Exactly.
the the new universe, honestly, haven't even started yet in tumbling, with the
Exactly.
reactions of just it's pretty, it feels directionless already, but whatever direction it's supposed to go in is something that obviously isn't for the long term.
Yeah, exactly. But Louis brings up a good point. So the director of Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder. So on Twitter, someone had brought up about how like the overcut comedization of Thor ruins his mythos. And that's the quote there. I'll ruin your mythos in a second, baby, is literally what YTT responded with. And he even was honest and said, oh, I never read a Thor comics. I read like an issue of Thor and thought it was the stupidest thing in the world.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's what the guy said. And then
Wow.
the guy after Thor flopped, he did a video that's like director reacts to like the CGI in his movies, kind of like that. And he basically like made fun of the visual effects artists, many of which are overworked because Marvel gives them ridiculous hours and will often have them redoing entire shots at a moment's notice up until like the I've heard of them having to change visual effects days before a movie releases.
The hell?
And this guy is making fun of the CGI in Thor Ragnarok not being good. I'm like, hey, a-hole, you should have done your job.
Yeah, that's mm-mm.
And but it was kind of funny is he had also so he was in the running to direct a Star Wars movie. So he asked Natalie Portman, "Hey, would you ever star in a Star Wars movie?" Hey, Britt, guess what? Guess how many movies Natalie Portman has starred in Star Wars?
Even
3.
even though I have never, really watched Star Wars, at least I know that she's been in Star Wars.
3 of them, and she was a very important character. She was on all the
Wow,
posters. What are you talking about? I'm like,
that's awful.
see, that's the other thing. The director's a freaking turd. And so there was that. But regardless, so there's this great scene in Thor 2. There's this big battle that's happening, and Sif is getting almost overrun. Thor uses the Bifrost and comes down and saves her. Then Sif goes, "I've got this completely under control." And Thor goes, "Is that why everything's on fire?" Properly see, that's how you do Thor like humor. That's how. By the way, Britt, we need to use that line.
Noted.
Yeah, I had to tell you that, but yeah. So overall, and with Ragnarok, so they wanted to do it to take a more comedic take, but again, it didn't bother me as much because Waititi did not write it. If he wrote it, and here's the thing, again, Marvel learned the wrong lesson. So they were like, "Oh, this movie did really well." It was like sandwiched between two very highly hyped Marvel movies. Britt, just want to let you know that. But so they're like, "Hey, Taika, how about you write the next one?" And that's how we got Thor: Love and Thunder. It was so bad that Chris Hemsworth basically said he'll never work with Taika again. He basically called Taika a mad genius, and then later on the conversation said, "I don't think I'll ever work with mad geniuses ever again."
Huh.
And the next Thor movie, they're apparently going to go for a more darker take on it, which I'm like, okay, thank you. Go back to the good Thor. But regardless, but it's like, so Britt, to update me. So you've seen 1 and 4, right?
Right. I have seen Ragnarok. Yeah, the others are pretty much a blur. I don't think I really just watched them, but the first one, Ragnarok, and Love and Thunder. Yeah.
I may have to change that. So let's talk about Lady Sif and Thor. Britt, take her away.
Okay, so here's the Silver Age or the Bronze Age, and this is, as we said, she is like his mama. They grew up together. They know each other from basically what is expected of them, as warriors. And she is who um she is his equal, and she knows him as, you know, I guess accepting, his arrogance and everything. And she is very loyal to him, especially that was pretty much emphasized in the first movie.
Yeah,
They,
exactly.
I mean, as I said, though, she did feel like one of the boys, in a sense, but maybe in the second movie or so, she would be more of like um, I don't think they leaned into their romance much of in the movies.
Well, what
But
happens in the do you want me to tell you the hint in part 2?
yeah,
What happens is, so Thor obviously misses Jane, and then so he's observing warriors training with Odin, and Sif is among them training, and then Odin essentially wants Thor to like focus on the kingdom, and he goes, "You should pay attention to what's in front of you." Motions to Sif.
that's it.
And Sif basically like, and the "is that why everything's on fire" line. But yeah, there is some like there's some small hints, but it's never real, because again, they were trying to push Thor with Jane in these movies. Even when they broke up off screen of Ragnarok, he didn't go to Sif. He played the part of the depressed ex-boyfriend.
Yeah, that I did know about, and that was kind of like, okay, so we're going the Superman route, which
Off screen, which we all know, Britt, that's definitely not a lazy
hate,
storytelling technique, right?
right, right, hated. So yeah, she's basically within that. She's a warrior, childhood friend. Um, it's their romance isn't emphasized much, you know. She's still a support for Thor. Then we go to the Bronze Age where they are again, it's just this mutual respect. She is they do have shared storylines a little bit more frequently, but it's still just that, deep trust and com- um camaraderie and um and just fighting side by side as equals.
Hmm.
And well, as you explained within the movies, they really, did that very quick. Yeah, they might have history, they might not. They, you know, kind of like a rebound thing, which I don't like. So that's neither here or there. Um, and then you have the Walt era, where his he reshapes Thor's mythos entirely, and Sif's role grows a little bit more complicated, trying to make her character a little bit more complex. And that is where, because of that, of trying to give her a little bit more character, their romance kind of depletes. So it's not really there again. It's still more of being friends. I think within this era or so, or maybe it's the modern era, where they did try to give them like kids in Elseworlds, or I know it was a um straight to DVD uh Young Avengers movie where you
Yeah,
have,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, they have a daughter.
Torin, yeah, I remember what you're talking about. Oh,
Right.
they also did a young Thor animated movie where they hinted at the two.
Okay, yeah. So it's little things like that here and there, but it was really just them being friends with that kind of underlying type thing. It's a what if in a sense.
Yeah, and then I didn't know they did the whole jealousy thing there. That's interesting.
Yeah, just a little bit like, I guess, with still going, honestly, it feels like some writers or creatives, they do take bits and pieces of what this, writer may go for. So yeah, within Superman being the template of Thor in a sense, they tried to a little bit, but it wasn't truly a thing.
Exactly. So then we get to the modern era.
So again, really just the only thing I would say is that it was just the Elseworlds thing of like having a kid. But other than that, it really was just them being partners as friends or
Or
but the
they did one more thing in this era that I know you're gonna hate. So I'm sure you've seen art of Loki as a woman.
yes,
Do you know where that comes from?
the show,
Look,
right?
no, it's not the show. No, it's in the comics they did it, but so this is why they did in the comics. So Ragnarok happens, the gods die, but Loki inhabits the body of Sif.
Oh Lord.
That's where the female Loki in the comics comes from.
No way.
Yeah, I'm
Ew.
like, ah,
Why?
I don't remember. You have to ask Robert. He's more the Thor guy. But as soon as I heard that, I'm like, well, that's disturbing on so many levels.
So many levels. That is okay, whatever.
I love that. I love Brit's reactions to things. That's why I tell her this type of stuff. She's probably throwing up the
I was
middle
just about to say
finger
that.
at me right now.
Well, I wasn't throwing the middle finger. I was gonna say that I might have like wanted to throw up a little bit, but
Well, yeah, there is that. So then we get the MCU Sif, which I like that again, but it's like it's again they did the whole. I mean, they also have a moment where in Thor 2 when there's like a celebratory feast and they do, and it's like they hint at like that at least Sif likes Thor, but obviously he has eyes for Jane, so there is kind of that. So it's kind, but again, it's like they're not like crapping on Sif as a character, so that's why I'm like, okay, I'm fine with that, but it's like I don't necessarily. I mean, here's the thing. I think in the MCU they took the coward route of how they hint at the two.
Yeah, they again with trying to emphasize one relationship. I mean, it's supposed to be complex, but with having that single mindset, and especially it's weird not to play on it a little bit more when they've broken up. So why
Mm-hmm.
not just, um, give it a little bit more emphasis on their history instead of downplaying it? That is the one thing that is I'm just not understanding your that is what you're supposed to do as a creative. Be creative and explore these, multiple relationships as they should be. Give you have the opportunity to show the audience, and especially when they don't know necessarily the source material, you know, give the audience not so much as a history lesson, but a little something to know that, yeah, this is this relationship dynamic. It changes over time, you know, over any era, but this is the core of it. And we need more of that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's like, and again, I would like if even if now that like Thor, that like Jane is dead, maybe Thor could move on with Sif, and then we get that type of thing. Like, hey, it's like maybe it's like they can do briefly a Thor is going through like mourning Jane, but then eventually he decides, hey, I'm not going to. Jane would not want me to like my life to like stop. So he eventually moves on with Sif after a proper amount of mourning, of course.
Right. I mean, that is the natural thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's what Superman did in the Tomorrowverse. We need to get Jim Craig on so we can talk about that because I so want to do that. But so one day we will. So then we get to the editorial reception of Superman Wonder Woman. I wonder how negative this slide's gonna
Oh
be.
Lord. It's
Oh
not
God.
it's not really because SuperWonder is definitely it's conflicting. It is 50-50 editorial writers and fans. It's just yeah. Um so pre-crisis it wasn't a thing for, to have these permanent relationships. This is where you have fun, where the what ifs, just just kind of like playing around with certain dynamics. So they in pre-crisis, we did have the flirtation. Um, there was Wonder Woman, I think it wasn't 300. It was um I want to say 266,
Mhm.
maybe. I'll have to look it up. But it was still in 1962 where Steve was basically being an a-hole.
As he
And
normally is.
right. And so Diana says, well, because of that, she has other plans. So she,
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I think we
right,
covered this comic a while ago.
right. So she calls, obviously, it was off panel. She calls um, Clark, and he's dressed up as Superman. And um, when Steve is looking for her, as soon as he turns the corner, Diana says, I have other plans. And she's, arm in arm with Clark. So, it's just fun things like that. Um, and we also have in JLA, where Barry says that he thought that they would get married during the mod era, where Diana and Clark also match on the computer to have a date, just things like that. Just you see them as this pairing, and it is very natural. Then in Post Crisis, we have the beginning of where they have this infatuation, instant attraction, setting up for their big date until the bait and switch of that in Action Comics 600. But upon reading the back issue anniversary special for George Perez, he actually wanted to rewrite Action Comics 600 and also give Clark and Diana that closure of whether they are together or not, they still, obviously have feelings for each other. It's just more so of a right person, wrong time type thing. He wanted Diana, to basically have her first experience of a romance and even go further to like third base with Clark within that too. And honestly, for post crisis, especially in the early years, if that were to go any further, Perez definitely would have been the one to write it. After that, they basically they weren't as close as
Mhm.
Perez established them to be. I would say until mid 90s, maybe, but that even turned around a very short period because of the marriage.
Mhm.
Then Kingdom Come happened, and that kind of rejuvenated the idea of Clark and Diana being together and rejuvenated that tension, you know, um, within the main line. So within that, you have um, Eric Luke, who revisits Perez run for Wonder Woman 141. And they
Mhm.
have that shared dream. Of course, again, the bait and switch of Clark saying that, part of him wants this to be real, but in reality, he is with someone else and he loves someone else, so they can't be together. Um, Another follow up to that was Superman. It was a Superman giant, and where basically revisionists of Clark being very pushy, wanting to be in Diana's life, but she's pushing him away. Um, and then what the Wonder Dome does is your deepest desires or whatever. And an image of Clark with Lois comes about where Diana sees that and he gets mad or whatever. And it's like that is basically telling the fans that it's supposed to be Superman and Lois, but at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, but they had the shared dream. So with that, you can definitely tell within the writing of some of the writers that it was a back and forth behind the scenes. And then of course we have the infamous, terrible, you know, regurgitated. Um, Let me see. Hmm. It's worse than poop. Immoral beloved story.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because and here's it's like I get that some people are like, I'm not go are like there are some people that are like if my loved one dies or like with us in Superman's case, if I'm sent to like another dimension for centuries and it dies, it's like, but eventually it's like, come on, that is absolutely like it's it makes Superman like one of those ridiculously like it turns Superman into, actually, you know what, Brie, you summarized it perfectly. Super simp.
Yeah, he's a simp in a it's not even the golden retriever in a adorable way. It's a very creepy way.
Oh my gosh, yes. So I'm like, that's really where I started to really hate Lois, is that overly devotion, because really no one should be like that obsessed with your loved one. Like,
Exactly.
never. Yeah, exactly. But then we get to our Brit and I's favorite era. And Brit, I had to fix this title because you forgot something very interesting on this. You forgot to put the after in after rebirth, like afterbirth, essentially.
Oh hell.
Yeah, so
Well,
I had to fix that for you, but don't worry, I got you. Which,
I mean, it could have
mhm.
been said something else, but we have to keep this PG-13.
Well, yeah, we
So,
could have, we can't exactly say the dead fetus era.
right. So, um, New 52, of course, we know that they finally, made it official,
Mhm.
but you had everything. You had the promotion of statues, you had the animation, video games, not including Injustice. That's no. I'm talking
Nope,
about like
nope.
Lego or something. Um, you had Justice League Action, you had the DC AMU before it turned into a pile of poop. Um, yeah, we had it all. Um, and then DC shot themselves in the foot, you
As they
know,
do.
as they do, and created the regurgitated well, I can't say it, but yeah,
How to
you get what I'm saying.
properly say it? It's
Cow manure.
oh yeah, okay. I can take that. If this were a window, the creeper would not lick it.
Oh, he would definitely probably throw up or something.
Yeah, exactly. This is not a head a decapitated head that he would kiss. Yes, that's an actual scene in the movie.
So editorial reverse course where Dan DiDio actually kind of like admitted that it was a bad idea. You
Really?
know, it's kind of like, well, yeah. And so the romance was quote unquote erased because it wasn't her Superman in the first place, and they brought back post-crisis version of Superman, who's very much just the coward Superman, as Jared puts it, and the nuclear family, especially with Jeff Johns saying that the election sort of made the decision, some of the creative decisions, which was, Superman being this all-American nuclear family, American dad type thing. And that's fine, but at the same time, in context, the fact that they killed off the Superman who basically stood up against police brutality, regardless of that police officer that was in the story being like some type of shadow demon or whatever, it was still the fact of the imagery itself and the story that it was
Well,
telling.
here's the other thing. It's like, don't try and blame like the election for bad creative decisions. Come
Right.
on.
And
You guys are adults.
you're right. And then you
Oh,
have
wait. Dave has a great thing. The future medical waste era. Ain't that the truth?
right. So yeah, this well, we also have the Trinity story that never happened, which I'm glad it didn't. Or
Hmm.
maybe, if we want to cause a fire, it should have happened just to sit back and see,
Well,
watch
yeah,
watch it all
we need
burn.
firewood, and in COVID, we needed toilet paper.
Right. So, there was a story for the Trinity, and basically Clark and Diana specifically would be protecting a hate speaking bigot. And it's kind of like, That really tells where DC was trying to align itself, because why are they protecting someone who hates them? In that sense of in being hateful, and also trying to be show their acceptance of that's okay. And of course it would be Batman that's like, no, I'm not doing that. He's not going to be um tainted in a way of, you know, um basically like this, maybe a liberal stance or whatever. But Clark and Diana, given that Diana is with a military guy, Clark is having his Lois forgive her um military father who committed genocide. If you want to talk about post crisis, you know, doesn't the history go back to that? So Sam Lane was a very evil man within post crisis.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. That's so true. Oh my god.
And then, yeah, you have, so with having Clark and Diana being who they are, as these icons of otherworldliness, of immigrants, and then you have them protect a hate speaking bigot. Okay, like, did that not, like, how did that almost or did get approved? You know,
Well, yeah, but it's like, because it's again. I also love again how it's like DC knows Rebirth was a mistake, but they keep trying to blame other things for Rebirth. They're like, "Oh, where was the election?" No, you guys were just idiots. How about you just say that?
they
Uh,
keep trying to
I can
blame.
respect that. I can respect it if you go, "Yeah, we effed up."
Right, they keep trying to blame New 52 and everything. And yeah, even that is why, yeah, I have to do a plug here. That is why I will be doing the thread on, analyzing Rebirth and telling the truth of how this actually did not help, specifically Wonder Woman at all. Because she is basically in what was set up within Rebirth of her not having her family, the Amazons, of her not knowing her place, her home, or anything like that. She became codependent on Steve. And now, because of that, and yeah, it does go into the DCEU synergy, but, and especially 1984, but Tom King is using that as, right now in his present run, she is very much codependent on Steve, and her whole motivation and everything like that is Steve because of Rebirth.
And by the way, Britt, real quick, Cameron asked, I thought he was just an overprotective military sergeant. He actually did genocide.
Yes, I think it was brought up in Our Worlds at War, um and within the Superman books at that time.
Oh,
But
interesting.
he also hated Superman, just like, period. Um, so, and tried to kill him. So I don't even think he knew that Clark and Superman were the same person. So, but he knew how close Lois was to him. Um, and there's also, I remember there was one page actually where Lois is trapped in a car or something. It was a big wreckage or something, and she was calling out for her father, and he did not help her. Um, and that pretty much showed that Lois is kind of like a scorned daddy's girl that's wanting her father's acceptance. And pretty much Clark becomes like this replacement, or to fill in that role that Sam, neglected with Lois. Which is terrible. That's terrible, terrible, emotionally toxic as a relationship of trying to basically have your significant other replace your parent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So then we get to the overall DC editorial attitude. Oh, I'm sure it's very positive. I'm sure it's not blinded by nostalgia at all. I'm sure it's not a bunch of old people calling someone fake Superman. I'm sure it's very hunky dory, right, Britt?
Right. Yeah. The editorial is very fecal. Um, you have support, but is temporary. We've seen where when there is support and investment with Super Wonder, it can, pun intended, soar. But when you can tell that is very much they want like this sort of just fan talk for a moment, then yeah, it is going to come off very just irritating to all sides of the fandom, regardless, even us as fans, because we're tired of the bait and switch. And also, long term editorial, just they don't want it to be long term, because of the expectations to keep up with the stories, to make sure that Diana stays within her role as an equal. You already have Tomasi saying it's intimidating and it's difficult to have her that way. I mean, even with the big um, team up books like the Justice League, Diana is in the background. It is presently Mark Wade, even though it is that KO tie-in, it's still the fact that Diana is very much in the background before then and even now more so.
And
And it's
didn't he
basically
actually say that like she was a
she's supposed to be
co-lead?
the heart and the co-lead. Yeah. It's like, okay, where?
Marketing.
Um, so it's disruptive to the Superman IP, which is basically Captain Save-A-Thought. He has to have that where he is the hero, the one that's the only savior. And Diana gets in the way of that because she is the savior too. Um, that honestly, that is very sexist and misogynistic and, chauvinistic, not something that should be praised by, again, Chloe's fans, because that's basically saying that Lois is the damsel. She is to be an accessory and everything of that nature to Superman's story. With Diana, it's equally both their stories, and honestly, it also veers to Clark being Diana's support.
Mm-hmm. Are you there? Anyway, but it's I think Brit's having technical issues currently. But yeah, it's like that's my point there. It's like look, I can understand if like here's the thing I want to stress with you all. When DC undid it, this was the reasoning according to I think it was either Charles Soule or Tony Daniel. It wasn't sales. It was just it wasn't sales. It was because of like of I
It
mean it was
was,
yeah it was that they want a new editorial direction.
and the direction was easy traditional ways. And yeah, it got stuck.
Essentially, what that new direction that DC wanted to go in, it's like if you have Taco Bell, then have a laxative immediately afterwards.
Yeah.
I had to. That's what that is. It's like bullshit all over the walls. You wonder why it was so much BS. I had to check out for 4 years. I had to shower. So I had to. But so then we get to Thor and Jane Foster, and so elaborate.
Okay, so again, the with Marvel, they of course let these relationships go as they may, whether it works or not, if they are to write them as working or not. Um In early times, it wasn't a serious thing, so they could go back and forth again with the dual identity and um, that triangle of two type thing. But it was still within, the respectful way of exploring it, and but it wasn't priority. Then midways, within the early 2000s through the 2010s, you do get a little bit more prominence of the relationship. And again, editorial is just letting it flow as it may. You
Yeah.
already explained the Jason Aaron era of that nature, but Jane she's evolved as a character, not just their relationship.
Exactly. By the way,
So,
Dave has a perfect way to describe Rebirth. It's the Chipotle restroom on seniors discount day.
wow, now that is disgusting. That is,
Never
mm,
change, Dave. Never change.
wow.
I love
I
my
mean,
audience.
when I see Chipotle already looks like grow up. So just thinking of that of a bathroom is just like, yeah, that is disgusting.
Yeah, it's bring your own laxative day.
Honestly, I don't even need a laxative. The food itself is a laxative.
All right, so moving on from crap. But yeah, exactly. But it's like, yeah, and you had like with with Jane, it's like, again, that's why I say the story itself is good. I may not like the reasoning, like the way they got to the story, but once you got to the story, I'm like, okay, I actually can enjoy this.
Right. It's some things that are contrived as we know the reasoning behind it, but if it is told in a decent way and you have art that complements it, then yeah, it'll pass.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like it's that's why I don't defend that run, but I'm like, okay, I see what he's doing there, and that was at first why I was like, okay, Jason Aaron could write Wonder Woman, and then I remembered again all of the BS that like we can play that like I told you about with like he would make Wonder Woman a less intense version of the All-Star Batman and Robin Wonder Woman.
Hmm. So basically, post having Laura and John, then.
Yeah, so I was like, maybe not right Wonder Woman. But then we get to the current era where she's Valkyrie, and I like that. I like that once they gave Thor back his hammer, they didn't relegate Jane to just being like, okay, so now she's back in the background. No, they actually found another role for her, and one that, as a nurse, that her being Valkyrie works really well because of Valkyrie's like mythological association with death.
Yeah, and it's not like Lois, the fact that as soon as they, took away the powers, she wasn't in the book at all. Like for at least about a good, what, 4 to 5 issues. And now that she is supposedly back as Superwoman temporarily again, that is her only way of, being within the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm like that. It's that story will never, ever be as cool as they think it is. But it's like the point is, overall, Marvel has put a lot of work into developing Jane. And again, I'll take as a because they could have easily, as soon as she gave the powers back to Thor, it's like, okay, she's gonna be like, she'll be like stuff in the background. But no, she actually played a very big role in a lot of big Marvel events. So I'm like, okay, you guys actually gave me something to work with. And then we get to Thor and Lady Sif.
With them, again, it's just her being his partner, showing the equality, and again, she's to sum it up, basically being his Lana, and they let that happen. You know, as they got older, it was a very much a toss up of the romance, you know, but it was kind of like if writers want to explore it, they can. If they don't have to, but they aren't going to neglect the friendship, or it's not going to be anything that's a threat. It is going to be valued and respected, and you know they are going to have it, you know, there as an important component to Thor's story, and as well as Sif being just a constant support.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, again, it's like that's why I'm fine. That's the cool thing about this, and this is and when you think about it, Britt, you know what's kind of interesting is that we said that like Sif is like the more Diana thing. Really, they both are when you think about it, because again, Sif is the combat one. She understands him from a mythological perspective. When you think about it, it's like Jane is also the one that kind of encourages Thor to like have fun and stuff. And that is so another thing Diana does for Clark, because she encourages him to like come out of his shell, if you will. Remember where
Exactly.
it's like it's like assuming Wonder Woman's, I want to say 7. It was the last arc. It was the last issue.
7.
Yeah, where they go dancing. So it's like it's that's like one of the like things that like Jane would do for Thor. So really, when you think about it, they both are the exemplify Super Wonder perfectly. So it's really like one does not. You could just say both.
Right, and that's why I said that Super Wonder can be that traditional relationship, or can, you know, but can also challenge what the expectation of traditional relationship means.
Yeah, exactly. So then we get to the writer's perception. And this is definitely not going to be like any amount of pettiness or just some old boomers not willing to move on because they have an unhealthy obsession with a certain lame character in DC that they keep trying to give powers and turn her into Timo Diana, even though that's a stupid idea and should never have been done beforehand. It's definitely not that, right, Britt?
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Oh. I'm sorry. I had to. You set me up so perfectly for this.
I dig. So with this, the writers, a lot of the time it is going to be in Elseworlds, but even now, because it started and really flourished in Elseworlds, you can tell that even that is a threat. So
Well,
we
here's the
don't
thing
really have that.
also. Because of Tom Taylor, people are probably going to think that in Elseworlds, Diana, the only Super Wonder that's acceptable is Diana and Kara.
No,
Even though it's not,
absolutely not.
I know, but even though Zala is not Kara, people aren't going to put that much thought into it.
That is Kara. And the thing is, she looks like the teen Kara, and knowing the relationship within main, you know, Prime universe, that Diana is basically supposed to be like a big sister to her,
Mm-hmm.
and she met Kara when she was 16. So yeah, that not Kara, whatever Kara in Taylor's Elseworld, I don't like. I don't like the implication of that at all. It just it really felt like they did want to have Super Wonder or something like that. Or it's, you know, it's kind of like how he did in Deceased when he put Cassie with Damien. And it's like Cassie is
With the murderer.
so
That's right.
it's not even that. It's the age differences. It's kind of like, no, it just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's because he
writers,
wanted to have Wonder Bat, but Batman was dead at the time.
that and, you know, the backlash period of it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So writers would have Super Wonder for to show again the equality, to show the how they align thematically, the natural partnership, and it is more interesting than traditional relationships when you again want to be creative. But honestly, the only writer that we trust is Sewell because
Yeah.
he actually understood their perspective, and it helped that he is or was an immigration lawyer.
Oh yeah, exactly. And yeah, and it's also why he wrote a pretty damn good Daredevil. Who would have thought the lawyer would write
Right,
lawyer characters well?
right. Um, so it is creatively divisive though, because with the writers who oppose of the relationship is basically boils down to the classic traditional pairing, and they will veil it as thinking that that Diana will be overshadowed or something like that. But no, it's just they're lazy and just want to take the easy route with the traditional relationships.
Wait. Cameron, no. He's not talking about Cassandra Cain. He's talking about
Cassie Sandsmark.
Sandsmark. Yeah, exactly. So it's not like Bat Family people.
Oh no, no, it's not that family. It is Wonder Girl.
But who would later become Wonder Woman? That's the way they want to do like Wonder Bat. But it's like, is it kind of funny how many mental hoops you have to make in order to make Wonder Bat work? Which even then it doesn't work because Damien's killed people and was like raised by assassins, and Cassie's like one of the sweetest people around. It's almost like no matter how you try and like wargame it, Wonder Bat is just a stupid idea.
Of course.
Or more accurately, as I referred to in my Twitter feed, scam.
Well, yeah.
So there you go. So then we get to Thor and Jane Foster, and it's like, yeah, Jason Aaron is the one that, like, at least from a modern perspective, he really like expanded on that. The
Exactly.
reinvention of the mythology is the problem, but it's like, for the most part, I get it. It's like if you make saying Clark Kent is a mantle. That's kind of what that's, because Thor is his first name. It's like, wait, it's like, wait, all I have to do is be pissed off at DC, and then I can say I'm Brit.
Funny.
Although I would not be able to like use your turns of phrases the way you do them. I mean, there's a reason why now Chucky Baby is now part of the lexicon of my channel. Oh my god. But
well, I mean, blame Nicola for the
her arms are like out like this, and the legs like dangling. Diana's holding it like this.
I mean, in her facial expression, she looks disgusted. It's kind of like, girl, you're the one that created it. I mean,
well, here's the thing: the way Nicola Scott draws faces, they're either disgusted or very high.
and with the Jalen O'Nally Nunn chin.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, that's why I'm not the biggest fan. But
Right.
yeah, but it's like a lot of other writers have like either expanded upon it or just not touched Jane Foster entirely. I mean, I know I know Donny Cates kind of dealt with that, but more of like on the Donald Blake perspective. But there are other things there, and this is another thing, Britt. This is another thing Jason Aaron did. That was so. You know who the Phoenix is, right?
Yes.
Did you know that's Thor's mother?
What?
So in Jason Aaron's Avengers, it's revealed that there was an Avengers BC, which is essentially like an ancient Avengers, and Odin's on the team, and then the Phoenix is on the team, inhabiting the body of like a Cro-Magnon woman. So Odin sleeps with that woman, essentially sleeping with the Phoenix. then that's how Thor is created. And Donny Cates, this is the greatest thing Donny Cates ever wrote. So when Donny Cates wrote Thor, so he basically did it. So he wanted to like undo it, but he couldn't like go through all the like retconning stuff. So what he did is he had Frigga, Thor's actual mother, say, when you said the words mother, it was to me. No matter what anyone says, I am your mother.
I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah. Why? But that's the question. Why would the space bird? I don't understand. So I'd see there were a lot of creative decisions for DC on that where I was like, I'm not digging that at all.
You said DC, you mean Marvel?
Oh, damn it. All right, yeah, exactly. Thank you, Cameron. But so then we get to Thor and Lady Sif, which it's like it's the natural like pairing again. It's like it's almost like Brit. Oh, of course, Superman and Wonder Woman. I mean, Thor and Sif would end up together. They're both like gods. Isn't it kind of funny, Brit?
Right, and it's crazy that this can be acceptable, knowing that they are, a natural pair and an obvious pair or something. It's not turned into anything negative like Clark and Diana's relationship is. It is something that writers write. You can't say that Clark and Diana is negative in terms of being natural or obvious, but then you have, say, Aquaman and Mira, who is obvious. You have Batcat, obvious. Um, all of these other relationships are very much obvious. Traditional relationships, period, are obvious. So, what makes Clark and Diana's relationship in that term bad? And also the God times the God, um, and anything like that, you know, is it honestly is only because Clark and Diana are of a separate franchise. That's the only reason why.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, aren't there people like Tom King that kept trying to get Wonder Woman taken onto the Batman editorial for no reason?
No, that was Rucka.
Oh, that was Rucka. Ah, okay. It's equally bad, but okay, I see. So then we
Right.
get to so then we get to fandom perception of Superman and Wonder Woman. This definitely won't be divisive and very toxic, huh?
That's exactly what it is. Where you get, the death threats, you get the harassment, um,
The N words being sent to you, and I'm
you
like,
get slurs, yes,
you're
you
sending a
get,
slur to an African American woman. That's a good idea.
you get all four fictional characters. Just again, reality thrown out the window. Yeah, basically is very divisive, highly passionate, whether you like it or not. Yeah, it is going to cause a lot of conversation, which is why we love it, but also why some hate it. And honestly, Clark and Diana are, in a sense, a celebrity couple.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, but it's like people only have like a very surface level view of like Diana of well Diana, yes, but of this relationship, and I'm like, no, that is like, I'm sorry, like it's like, tell me you don't read without telling me you don't read. It's like that's that's the stupid part with these people. It's like again, they act like only the comics that they have read are the only DC comics that have ever been released. And isn't that kind of like dishonest?
The thing is, what comics are they reading? Unless it is something within Rebirth, you know, um, even Immortal Beloved, even, um, Action Comics 600. Honestly, you can say that within those stories, you can tell it was a bait and switch. You can tell it was very much editorially mandated or a writer's bias, even with who wrote it, the writer within that comic, or the context um of the story, whether it was before or after a certain scene. Like even in Action Comics 600 or just post crisis overall, Clark was the one who still he had to basically go to therapy for his repressed feelings for Diana. It was always written in a way of they do have feelings for each other, but it's repressed, and they are purposely distant from each other. And even if they do try to talk about their relationship and their feelings, it is going to be downplayed. Somebody is going to be used as a mouthpiece, and it is going to come off where very try hard of trying to dismantle, any potential relationship. And but it just kept going. It kept being something brought up, just that unresolved type thing up until Rebirth, where Rebirth is basically if you like this certain ship, if then you aren't a fan, which is kind of a desperate and very toxic move as a company, very stupid, because again, it is a multiverse. You can explore these different relationships, or being if you want to have, you know, you're hell bent on Chloe being the end all be all. But Clark still had a life before Lois. He can have other relationships explored, you know. So it's not something unheard of.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, yeah, we really hate when they downplay the relationship. Yeah, exactly, because it's like here's the thing about Lois. Literally everything Lois gives Clark, other characters give him and more. Like Diana, she gives him love and she gives him friendship. Lois just gives him a pain in the ass. So it's like that's the thing. You know how like some husbands refer their wives as the old ball and chain? That's Lois.
Oh yeah, she definitely is. Which is funny because
The cuff that holds the ball and chain to your ankle is inward facing spikes.
well, yeah.
I had to. What were you saying, Britt?
I was just saying that yeah, she is, this ball and chain, and it's funny that Superman is supposed to break chains, but yet he is, you know, basically caught up in one. And to say she is a kryptonite, no, she is definitely not in that sense of trying to have it in a romantic way. It's
Well,
very
yeah,
much a toxic.
exactly. She is kryptonite, but not for the reasons they think.
Right.
And Barry Gandalf says, it's actually funny how much you hate Lois. Welcome to the club, man. Welcome to the club. It's like it goes back for years of psychological trauma at the hands of that character. So Superman's supposed to be able to lift anything. Anything a ball and chain ain't nothing. Well, have you seen Lois? That's all I'm gonna say on that. But Lois is essentially what happens when something that's like the weight of a dying star like crashes onto Earth because no one can move her and no one can get rid of her. And then Gano says, "I've seen you getting downvoted for on Reddit for Lois hate." Well, someone has to. So I will accept that. I will take. I'm essentially the guy. It's like if like there's machine guns of Lois, like of hatred for like me hating Lois. I will stand there, arms portrayed, and say, "Take me."
That is hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. But so then we get to Thor and Jane Foster. By the way, it's like. But I'm gonna play this clip real quick one more time, and then I'll do a little promo. Here's what I think of Lois.
Le who? The her.
And once again, I gotta play this one more time.
How would you like me to make your life a living hell?
Well, I'm not really ready for a relationship, Lois, but thank you for asking.
So I had to say that. So then, yeah, it's like I was recently rewatching Ace Ventura, and I forgot that her name is Lois. By the way, she's the villain in the movie, by the way, so could not have gone any perfect.
Wow.
But it's like as soon as I hear Lois, I'm like, I can't not clip that.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's like there's nothing so perfect as that. But anyway, so you get to Thor and Jane Foster, and it's like, yeah, it's like in the early days of Marvel, you did have that. I mean, we talked about it with like Sue Storm as well. The female characters, unless it was a female-led book, it was like they were very much like overshadowed by the male characters. And well, again, at the time, there weren't as many female comic book fans. And you can argue as Marvel like matured, and DC to an extent, but as Marvel matured, that's when the female characters started to get more of an emphasis, like Ms. Marvel. And I mean, Carol Danvers back when she was tolerable. Please see our Carol Danvers episode. But that's kind of like where the early years went to it. And then the Mighty Thor, again, it's like she's become an icon. She has her own statue and Funko Pops. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny how that works. And again, it's like, again, the story itself is good. So it's like, at least it's justified to a degree. See, here's the thing. At least Aaron had a legitimate story with like the cancer stuff and all that stuff, as opposed to the way a lot of the other all new, all different swaps were, Britt, where, okay, so He Who Must Not Be Named, but had a really crappy, like, Superman run. I think you know, I think, but by this point, you know what I'm talking about. He has a thing where, I believe adopted, or like, basically he has two black daughters. So whenever he writes these characters, whenever he writes comics, he wants to give them like characters that they can see themselves with. That's fine. That is 110% honorable. In fact, that's partly why Miles exists. But so he wanted to have like a black female genius that's like in the Iron Man world. Now, Rhodey has a daughter that he could have used, but because he wouldn't get royalties, he created Riri Williams. So, Britt, Riri is universally hated at the time because essentially she had this really cringe interaction with her college professor. She basically told him, "Oppress me."
You know, that is basically why, certain writers just should not try to write diverse characters or create them. Because
yeah.
Mm-hmm. They will dive into, racist stereotypes or, things that they think will be empowering or whatever, but it's actually very tone deaf. That's the same thing that he tried to do with John. To say that John is biracial, meaning in a literal term of racial because he's half human, half Kryptonian. And he tried to, in a sense, relate John to his kids. It was no, that's not the same thing. That is definitely not the same thing. And his way of trying to, write certain characters, or just in general of how some of these creators write these characters, as I said, is very tone deaf, is racist stereotypes that just very unnecessary. I get that they are trying to relate to the audience or whatever and trying to pull in the diverse audience, but it's definitely giving Hello Fellow Kids but also add in some slurs to it as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, no, it's like I do not dig that. And the thing is, all of his like diverse characters have caught on after he left the book. Miles is the only one that people liked, but that was because it was in Elseworlds and Peter Parker had died, and when when Secret Wars happened and the Ultimate Universe was like destroyed and merged into Marvel, that's why Miles is in the main Marvel universe. But then what happened was he's kind of redundant. He kind of still is, but he didn't get a lot of attention until a certain movie came out called, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Spider-Verse.
Right.
That's where he really got like the popularity that he deserves. Miles is a great character, but other than that, it's like, yeah. But so we have Thor and Jane Foster, and again, it's like I like. So you have the movies, and it's like Portman, I think was pretty good. She was better in the first movie. It's like the thing about her in the like fourth movie. The other part that was kind of like what are you doing? Is when also she's trying to come up with like a catchphrase. Britt, this is just like when Tom King is trying to give Wonder Woman the no thank you catchphrase. Thor doesn't have a catchphrase.
I don't even know why is that a thing? Like,
it's not. Superheroes don't have catchphrases anymore. That's not a thing anymore.
Right. They don't have to have that.
It's old creatives. Remember, Tom King is the one that apparently thinks it's still weird that there are male Wonder Woman fans. What? Anyway, but so then we get to Thor and Lady Sif. All right, and yeah.
Oh no, you can go.
No, but it's like, yeah, but it's like with this, it's like, yeah, people still see her as like other thing, but they haven't really, as far as I know, they haven't really Superman Wonder Woman did where they actually give it a shot. And I would like now the panels I picked are, so it's kind of cool. So when Marvel revived the Ultimate Universe, what they did with this is Thor was a prisoner on Asgard, and Sif was like essentially his jailer. But when the Ultimates, this universe version of the Avengers show up to recruit him, they take him away. But Sif comes with him, essentially saying, "You're my prisoner. I need to keep an eye on you." So they both join the Avengers. It's actually a really good run by Denny's Camp, current writer of Absolute Martian Manhunter, as a matter of fact. It's really, and it's the universe that, so Marvel was jealous that like Ultimate Spider-Man was out selling their agenda-driven, stupid Spider-Man. So at New York Comic Con, they literally announced the Ultimate Universe is ending.
Honestly, I think that they're going to
they'll bring it back in another iteration, but they're ending this version. Britt, these were the top selling books at Marvel.
Honestly, I think that saying that they're going to end it and probably relaunch it next year and say like a season 2 or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm like, and I love Scott Snyder. He's like, yeah, we're not ending the Absolute Universe anytime soon.
I mean, that's because he's plotted Absolute Batman for like 35 issues. And honestly, again, it's only a year and 2 months. So it's kind of like simmer down just a little bit, with the expectations and everything. Give it at least a full second year to going into the third year to see where it goes.
Yeah, but the point is, it's a big fu to Marvel for him to say, yeah, you know the Ultimate, you know the Absolute Universe that's like dramatically that's like our top seller. Yeah, we're not stupid enough to end it. So I'm just saying, but if it's like with this, it's like again, I do like, again, they also represent And Jane Foster also has this, but it's like they also represent, again, gender equality, because they're both renowned warriors and they're both are like very like equals in power. Let me put it to you this way, but it's kind of funny. So they argue that Jane. So detractors argue that Jane gives Thor more emotional depth. Believe Thor and Sif is too easy or lacks drama. Consider Sif better as a sister at arms, their romantic partner. Where have we heard that before?
Exactly. It's the same
What?
thing. It's the same thing.
It's these are the people that, here's the problem. These are the people that believe that superheroes should never date other superheroes.
I mean, that would honestly take away, Reed and Sue, Aquaman
So
and
many
Mira.
couples. Well, it's Hal and Carol, they count. But it's like it's like, again, when I had Comic Storian on my channel, RIP, one thing he said is like the problem with pairing superheroes with non-superheroes like Superman with Lois and such. It's like, look, inevitably the story gets into he saves her. That's inevitably what it's going to resort to.
And when they try to do she saved him. Okay, that's because you write Clark as really dumb. Like,
Or
it's
like,
something
sorry,
that,
I love where in the James Gunn Superman movie, when they get him out of the pocket dimension, he goes, "You came to get me." And I go, "Brother, Mr. Terrific is the reason why that door's open."
exactly.
At least give him some credit. I would love if Terrific was like, "I'm here too."
Yeah, it is. I don't know. It's very contrived. It's very contrived.
But definitely not as contrived of Lois using a Hellbat suit. There's no way DC would ever do that. So anyway, moving on. So then you have here's the thing. It's like, isn't it kind of funny, Britt, how every other couple we have covered, every other one, it's allowed for them to explore other love interests. Isn't that funny?
It's because, again, they aren't exactly just confined, and to, I would say it doesn't even have to be with the marriage. And I think that's why Dan Jurgens was pushing so hard for John to exist, because that was the sole reason of shutting the door on different possibilities. Because the marriage.
But here's the problem with that, Britt. You could try and make the argument that that's why they gave Bruce Damian. He's not with Talia.
Right.
That's the massive hole in that argument.
It is, but DC is far more conservative in those views, so they would think that Superman is the married man with the kid, so he has to be with Lois because of that.
Yeah, of course, because he definitely can't be married with kids with Diana. It's not like one of the biggest DC storylines of all time that was drawn by Alex Ross features them having a bunch of kids.
Right. And it's not even just about the kids. It's more so that just in general, again, it's a multiverse. You can explore these different relationships with alternate timelines or different Earths. Prime Earth for DC right now is already just no one cares for it. So it's like, why not explore it somewhere else? And honestly, again, you put yourself right back into the predicament that made you reboot in the first place. If it wasn't for the absolute verse, yeah, DC would be like really just in the most embarrassing state. But
exactly.
Even probably more so than it was when they was pressured to reboot. But your only saving grace is an Elseworld. It's an alternate universe.
Exactly.
For so long, that has been DC's moneymaker, or the stories that really stood out were the Elseworlds. Yeah, Kingdom Come is your all-time, you know, most well-known story for the DC universe. Um, Even more so impactful and known than Crisis.
Exactly.
And but because of that, and like I said, even that is a threat because you don't, it just pretty much shows that if you have a story with Clark and Diana together, whether was to be Prime or an Elseworld, it is that fear of overshadowing the traditional relationships. And especially if Clark and Diana's relationship is written purposely, with the investment and to work as it should, then yeah, it can, you know, be that competition that they don't want.
Oh yeah, 100%. So then we get to in the end, both these couples work. So it's like it's very cool to see that you can have an alternative, but neither of the other alternatives cancels out the other. And it's like this should be a lesson because it's like you can give let Clark explore his feelings with Diana. Well, again, he's married to Lois, so there is that complication, but it's like this is why again you shouldn't have superheroes get married per se because it's like that severely limits what you can do here.
Exactly, and that's why Didio wanted to get rid of them.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he was right. But anyway, so so before we get on to our crossover story, I'm going to do my annual plug. And I feel like plugging a book called Athena, the Goddess of Thunder could not be more appropriate this week's episode. So I'm going to play the trailer real quick.
My home has been invaded, my people slaughtered, and I could not do anything to stop it. Not again. I will not lose another home, another family. I am Princess Lyra of the planet Sintragar, Athena, the goddess of thunder, and this is my story.
I may be going crazy, Britt, but the voiceover in that trailer sounded very familiar.
It did. It did.
Isn't that funny? It sounds like someone that has fantastic takes. I wonder. I wonder. It's not that I'm anti-marriage. It's just from a storytelling perspective that does kind of limit the stories you can tell.
Okay, so it depends. Okay, because marriage, you do have, is basically another chapter or another journey for the characters. So it's not limited, it's only limiting different relationships. But if you are going to have that, that specific relationship, you can have, you know, um, different stories with the marriage. And honestly, we have done so in Shelterverse. So
Yeah, which it's like again, if the like this way, I'm more of the anti-marriage to Lois because if that marriage does not like lower Clark's like identity, I have no idea what it does. But anyway, speaking of lowering Clark's identity, so Brit's favorite Superman story is Immortal Beloved. I'm only kidding. Even I can't say that. So
you
it's
better be
like,
glad I was on mute because
yeah, exactly. So here's the thing. The problem with this storyline, among others, is it's such a bait and switch. This is the story that Tom King plagiarized from for his Batman run. I want to be very clear on that. And he may claim he never read this story, but then why is it exactly the same story down to the bait and switch?
he said that he never read the story, but then, oh my gosh, I wish I could probably try to find the podcast um, or go back to where it was said. It was on the CBR forum, when this came out, but he said that like basically his version of it was more feminist.
Mm.
And basically like he was trying to say that it was more like respectable, and I'm like, where? Because Diana was written, honestly, both, versions are just complete cow manure. But the original, you know, story, it was a mutual attraction. It
Mhm.
was actually um playing on the unresolved feelings that they had. Um so it was something there. But Tom King's version was explicitly having Diana as this temptress, just randomly, and wanting her to, be flirtatious and everything. And even to the point of having her say, you miss her, you referring to Selena, but saying you're here with me. And it's kind of like, that is not Diana. Diana would never, you know, act like that. She would never be a temptress in that sense, and never advocate for cheating. Diana is very much a person who loves love, yes, but she is, when she's, with someone, she's with that person, and she respects others' relationships, period. Um, so yeah, the way that was written was totally off. And that is pretty much why King ended up with the backlash that he did.
Yeah, he should, justifiably so. Again, I say this many times. The man will take credit for stuff that he had nothing to do with, but then it's like when people criticize him for legit stuff, he will blame other people. Anyway, back to this. So it's like so Britt, let's do what we normally do with DC stories. Some could say it literally started the Shelterverse. Let's fix a DC mistake, shall we?
Right. So instead of Immortal Beloved, because that, now I understand the title, which is basically like it, he's, forever
Mm-hmm.
like focused on Lois, obsessed with her, whatever. No, this is Immortal Bonds, and it's basically a
They spell
exploration,
bonds?
kind of, sort of, yeah. So this is you're taking the core concept of them, of course, going to Asgard, or, Valhalla, and they are there for 1,000 years, fighting a battle or whatever, and how they do get close. But this time you have another couple, Thor and Sif, who has been through this, that they are, whether they are friends or lovers, they they don't let the relationship just be defined by anything. They love each other, and that should be all. Um, so um, this pretty much explores, you know, the right person, wrong time, the weight of immortality, really understanding that if Clark is to live for 1,000 years, Lois will be gone, and he has to accept that. It can't be like DC 1 million, where he puts her soul or brain or whatever into a robot or whatever
Or
that
like
was,
where
android.
he gives her a drug that lets her live forever in the Tom
Yeah,
King Superman story. Ha
right. It's nothing like that. It is basically, if you want to talk about how Clovis is a very human relationship, well, in human terms, naturally Lois will die naturally as a human. That it is what it is. Um, so and then you have the exploration of a friendship that deepens to something, you know, it's not defined by romance. It's not anything like that. It's just something that you could truly be there for this person. And, you know, again, whether it forms into a romance or not, it doesn't matter. But you do have this person by your side and just basically just spiritually connected. Um, and you have that spiritual intimacy with this person of, you know, you can be in battle, you can have these quiet moments, you can, you know, have fun, cry. What basically what we have seen Clark and Diana's relationship um with, I would say even Wonder Woman 800, you know,
Hmm.
that it was in, yeah, going the Conrad route and having them ambiguous, where it's like, okay, if they're supposed to be friends, why is he saying, you know, so much beauty it hurts, and he's like looking at her lovingly and the way that they're drawn?
Yeah.
Why is it like that? It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
So, yeah, so Thor and Sif is basically the inspiration for how Clark and Diana realize that they don't have to choose which way to go about their relationship. They basically just let it flow naturally as it should be. And this is also meta commentary for DC as well. It's kind of like, stop trying to purposely make whatever happen. Just let it go. That's pretty much how I write stories, is that yeah, I do have an overview, I do have these plot points, but how it's written, you know, and formulates, sometimes the story drives itself and it ends up being a darn good story, you know. So you just have to let the narrative go the way it wants to truly get a story that resonates. And that's pretty much why this story is so controversial, and it it doesn't really make sense, you know, and it really emphasizes on how contradictory writers and fans are. Because again, you want these characters to be human, but yet when it's time for them to be human, you complain about it and want them to be robotic or whatever.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So, the call to battle.
So basically, if you've read Immortal Beloved, you know, it starts off the same way in a sense. I don't think he would be actually married to Lois here. Maybe they're dating, but you know, just to get away from that, it's casual dating. So they're not really just exclusive in that sense.
Hmm.
Just to get away from the cheating scandal, you know, we
Oh
don't
yeah,
want that.
there'll still be people who accuse him of cheating, but okay.
Right. So, a storm tears apart the sky above Metropolis. Superman arrives first, Wonder Woman arrives. They don't really say much because there is some tension um, that beforehand, you know, maybe I would say there was another battle and they, you know, kind of got close or something happened, and just that emotional trigger. Um, Maybe the events in Wonder Woman 141 happened, you know. So it's a very awkward moment for them for now, but you can still feel that tension between. So but they always, even if they don't talk, they talk with their eyes, or you know, just that sort of knowing each other's even movements. They end up in Valhalla, and standing before them is Thor and Lady Sif. Thor smiles, and he's not the one that was in Immortal Beloved. He is the Marvel version, of course.
Good.
And so he basically says, you know, oh, we've been waiting for champions of another realm, and so fate has brought you here. You know, basically, we need your help for this war that is coming. And Sif agrees and says, you know, we need allies. Clark and Diana, they're basically just kind of like, okay, so we were chosen, um, basically as the chosen ones to help with a war. Diana is all for it. Clark is kind of skeptical. He just, you know, because it's something that's just so out of nowhere.
Yeah. And you can have a fun interaction with Thor where he goes, "Why is there an S on your chest?" And then Superman goes, "Well, it's my people's symbol for hope." And then Thor goes, "I thought hope starts with an H." It's a little fun interaction there. But I like that. I definitely dig that. So the 1,000-Year War, and I'm sorry I have to share panels from Immortal Beloved, but this was the best way to visualize it.
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's okay. Um, so with the war, they are, you know, fighting the frost giants, shadow beasts, entities, you know, just all over the place. And it stretches from days to years to centuries. And, you know, and as we saw in Immortal Beloved, as the days and stuff went by, Clark, he grew a beard, you know, they grew closer, but it was something that it is still that wall between them, you know, but physically it was like you could tell that they are so much in sync. Um, with and also you are seeing how these couples um have similarities and contrast. You know, when they fight together, they are in sync as one. You know, the breathing, everything. They don't have to um, say anything at all, and they know the battle technique to use together. You know, just things like that. But they are not defined by the past. They, you know, basically redefined it themselves. So they just know how life works in a certain, you know, sense. But Clark and Diana, they are basically still fighting that, you know, those emotions and trying for it not to get the best of them. Again, if we are going to also attach this to 141, especially with the dream, it's kind of like this is something that they have trying to repress,
Yeah.
and it's becoming even more difficult, especially with them just being together. You know, at in their world, they live separate lives. They have the Justice League that's pretty much between them and everything. So with them um now being together, they have to face it.
Excellent. The long years.
Okay, so here again, the decades, the centuries, you know, Clark and Thor, they're fighting giants. You see Lady Sif, they are now switching partners in a sense. You know, you have this where they are bonding a little bit, and Thor, I would say he tells the story of Jane, you know, his relationship with her and how he dealt with it. He was heartbroken and everything, but he saw that they were incompatible, but he still loved her. He still had a life with her. Um, and this pretty much harkens back to Frank Miller's way of how he had Clark and Lois. Of he didn't really define that they were together in his, you know, in his verse, but he cared for, you know. So it could be something like that. Um, and he basically tells Clark, like, why are you hiding your feelings? And Sif is asking Diana or telling Diana, she said, just because you're a warrior or whatever, it doesn't mean that you can't love or you know, have to hide your feelings. So I would honestly, I picture Thor and Sif a little bit older, though.
Hmm.
Even though they are immortal, they still have that sort of older look in a way.
Hmm. I like that. Like the more like essentially we can kind of think about it like they're older Superman and Wonder Woman, kind of.
Right, right.
So okay, long years.
So again, you have more time has passed, um, but Clark is still, it's kind of like because they were just thrust into this new realm, they don't know what's going on in their own world. So of course Clark would, you know, wonder what happened to Lois, you know, before he moves on. But he is, you know, in that sort of leaning on, well, if this is my life and this is how things have been, then, you know, then maybe this is what it is. And they don't know if they'll get back. They don't know, you know, even if they do get back, what will meet them on the other side. You know, so that is the conflict that they will have. And again, Immortal Beloved, I would say that up until that last part where you did have the story and it was honest with how, you know, you deal with feelings changing.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how that one scene really ruins this.
Exactly.
It's like that one
So,
because everything else is good. I remember I told Brett this because I got it in a trade, in a Superman trade. It is one of these, I think. Oh, I think I put it in my shelf of shame, but it's one of the trades has it. And I told Britt that, and she goes, "Oh, that's horrible." And I go, "Why?" And he goes, "Read the end." And I go, "Yeah, that's horrible."
right, it's really the ending is what ruins the story. Um, so, well, that's a great transition to this next section. Um, so we have um, the Night of Truth, which is, you know, that part rewritten, where this is the big battle, and um, they have a feast and everything, and they have the music playing, and, you know, just the calm before the storm, in a sense. Um, Clark and Diana, they have a moment alone to realize that this is what they want. And they give each other one night. And it is to release all the tension and everything. They talk, they laugh, they, you know, and of course they end up having that moment of intimacy, you know, to, but it's not just of intimacy like they just wanted to sleep together. It's not nothing like that. It's just really just that feeling of connection that they've longed for. And again, if we go with Perez's version of Clark and Diana that he envisioned, they've already been together anyway. So it's just that, you know, again, right person, wrong time, but they have this history, very deep history of being together. So they're very familiar with each other. And that's pretty much why it's so difficult for them to stay away from each other. But also, in an actual sense of, you know, post crisis, that would make much more sense of why they were still so stuck on each other, you know, instead of just this repressed feelings that, you know, even if they did write it in that sense of letting it go and moving on, the back and forth just seemed very telling, you know, and especially with Our Worlds at War when Clark thought that it was Diana that died and he ignored Lois, you know, to go to her. You know, that
That's one of
really
my
says,
favorite parts.
right, that really says a lot about yes, you would mourn a friend or um any or just something like that. But just the way he was written, even when Diana caused the explosion in outer space, and how um Arthur had to tell Clark basically like, yeah, other people are injured too. And he's like, and Clark is like, no, he only basically cares for Diana's safety and how he has to get her back to Hippolyta. And Maxima says he cares for that one. And Arthur says he cares for everyone. But you can tell what he meant by that. What
Maxima's like,
Maxima, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So it's like, again, if you want these characters to be human, write them as such. Clark and Diana can easily have a young romance of, a whirlwind of something, and then they take a pause, a very long pause, but it's a pause. And, in a meta sense, but in a story sense, they decide, let's just be friends first and see where it goes. And it builds up to that where it's, have that regret, have that longing and everything. And, you know, that's what it is with relationships. And later on, if you have Kingdom Come as the ending for Post Crisis, they end up back together. It's as simple as that. So this story goes with that too, is that they have this one night together again, and it takes them back to that moment where they were young, and just reminiscing and cherishing, all the moments that they spent together.
Heck yeah. So then we get to return and celebration.
So obviously they have won the battle, and it's time for them to go back into their own realm. Um, and Thor and Sif gives them, this celebratory feast, and celebrates them and everything like that, and thanks them. The portal opens. Clark and Diana are hesitant to go because again they don't know what is going to meet them on the other side, but they have to. So once they get that sort of reassurance that everything will be okay, they step through.
Yeah, exactly. And then we get to only minutes.
So they realize that they've actually been gone for only like 20 minutes, just like within the actual story. But Clark and Diana now look at each other differently, and they have this different perspective of each other, this clarity of their feelings, and how they don't have to be so stiff around each other. They can just, you know, I'm not saying that they will be all lovey dovey kissy and stuff, but, if they want to hug, if they want to, just call on each other. They don't have to hesitate. And still, Clark has a clarity with his relationship with Lois. And I would say that because they weren't exclusive in that sense, how the relationship is a give and take. It's like if you want, take it or leave it in a sense. If you, especially if we write Lois how we would, with her being more focused on her job and stuff, then the relationship obviously will end at some point.
Oh yeah,
So
inevitably.
yeah.
But
So
yeah, so continuing on.
mm-hmm.
Christmas.
So Christmas, which is the follow-up of this story. It is, I forgot what, I think it was no, I don't, I forgot what issue, but it is a Christmas issue, and Clark gives Diana a gift. They are,
oh my god, Britt. You okay, keep going. I'll tell you why it's when oh my god.
So, within the story, we're following the story as it was. Clark and Diana are sparring in at the fortress. It's snowing. You have penguins, you know, um, and Diana is trying to give him advice while they're fighting. It is that moment where she kind of like pins him down, and they have that moment. And then once Clark gets clarity and everything, and is helpful, he says to um, Diana basically that he tells the truth that he can't talk to anyone else about this. Um, and she is the only one that understands, of course, and she lets him basically release the tension that he has. Um, and for for that moment, it's like Clark has another sense of, you know, maybe getting bashed bashed in the head in a metaphorical sense, that Diana is the one that he should be with, but he doesn't want to pressure her either.
I see. So here's why I went, oh my god, look at the pictures I picked for the next slide. I'm like, oh my god.
So yes, this is
As
the
soon
story
as
that
you
I'm
said
talking
that, I
about.
was like, oh wow. Twinning.
Yes, yes, always twinning. Yes, this is the story that I'm talking about. So, I mean, as you can see, they are sparring. She is in the far right corner. At the bottom, you can see that it doesn't look very friendly at all. The
And I
shadows,
love how their breaths are like mingling.
exactly. So yeah, it's very, it's not at all ambiguous to what it's trying to tell us.
No. It is ambiguous, Britt. It's just the Conrad school of ambiguity.
Right, right. So, so they um, so Clark ends up giving her his gift, which is a mini hammer. From basically from the moment that within the story itself, it was as a reminder of, them in Valhalla, and um that Clark will never forget anything. But also, of course, we got to add our little bit of, it is Clark did create it, and it is inscribed, combining um Amazon, patterns with Kryptonian, you know, things, just to show that they have unity and there is a love, that he has for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is much more sweeter, to know that basically, again, whether it's DC editorial or DC writers have this back and forth thing with Clark and Diana's relationship, where on one hand you have a writer who's trying to destroy the relationship, and then
Mm-hmm.
right after you have a writer trying to save the relationship with the same exact story.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Jimenez was after this.
Mm-hmm.
So he tries to say, with Wonder Woman 170, when Diana says, "Oh, Clark would die with Lois' name," saying Lois' name, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and how we fought 1,000 years and he still thought about you, you know, that whole thing was unnecessary. And then you have where, again, Clark going to therapy or thinking about Diana again in another story. So, yeah, it's this back and forth continuously within DC at that time. Um, but it's funny. So, you have the hug, and this is actually the ending um, of that story,
Mm-hmm.
where because it's shadowed, we can't tell if it's a hug or a kiss. We
I know.
It is so funny how Chloe's fans like that irritates the hell out of them because we really don't know what
Well,
that's
and not
supposed to
only
be.
that, they also did that in What Do You Get for the Man Who Has Everything?
That was a kiss.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, it was a kiss. And I'm like, yes, people that are just friends kiss each other all the time.
Honestly, Clark and Diana could do that. Like, I'm sorry, but I would have them do that because it's so cute and funny. And it's like their little communication. And it's like, oh, so you're dating? No. So why did you kiss? It's just what we do, you know?
And then Hal goes, that is the most confusing thing I've ever heard.
It is, but I
And
don't
then
know.
Guy
It's
Gardner
just,
goes, how? Guy Gardner takes Clark aside and says, teach me.
it's just, I don't know. It just
It's
a
funny.
very complicated thing of work spouses. You know, work spouses is basically like strictly platonic,
Mhm.
but Clark and Diana just, it again really just demonstrates how they redefine and turn traditional things upside down.
Mhm.
So again, you have the hug and then you have the kiss. The kiss is basically again that um picture the shadowed kiss from that story, the Christmas story.
Yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, there you go. That's the moment right there.
Yeah. Very sweet, very innocent, you know, very them.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. And Clark is the biggest gentleman ever. So, of course. And so, yeah, that's the story. Again, we're always fixing DC's mistakes.
Right.
We consider it a public service. So, hold your applause. Hold your applause. We consider it a public service. It's like, by the way, so when I first got into reading fan fictions, stories fixing this story were the number one thing that kept coming across my feed. I'm like,
Because
oh my
it's
gosh,
so
people hate this.
it's so honestly, it's very ignorant.
It is.
It's like you did not have to do such a poor story, and especially with the writer being Joe Kelly. And he not only did he want to preserve the close marriage or whatever, but he also at that time wanted Diana to be with Bruce. So he was, trying to do Wonder Bad, of course. But it was
It's funny how
also
it all
funny.
comes back to Wonder Bat.
And what's also funny is that later on, though, in JLA, he has Clark like dressed up in a robe, and Diana is like
Oh,
leaning.
I know the panel.
Yes. So it's kind of like, again, that editorial
She
or
has her
writers.
leg like across his crotch region, and I'm like,
Yes.
bro.
Yes. So again, it's that back and forth weirdness of the relationship that you don't know who's completely for and who's completely against. They might change their minds on it. It's complicated.
Exactly, exactly. So then let's get to our review. So, Britt, tell me about Green Lantern number 4.
All right, so we're getting more into balancing action and heart. You have the team up with Barry, which is always fun, you know, um, that leans into their friendship and how Hal is still adjusting to everything. And then you have Sinestro, and his plot line is still um going on and deepening, and he's not just the villain. It's more to it. um you also have the backup, which kind of it is exploring the sinister sons.
Yeah, I always skip those when I was reading it because here's the thing about that. That's just Tomasi being pissy that he didn't get to finish Super Sons. Because here's why that doesn't make sense, Britt. Sinestro and Zod have never interacted. The
Exactly.
Super
So
Sons had some precedence because it's Batman and Superman's kids.
right.
That makes
Yeah,
even less sense than Super Sons.
so true. But that's pretty much what it was. This issue overall was just a setup issue.
Yeah.
But the art remains consistent with being, really good and stands out. It was fun, but again, it was just mostly a setup issue.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's pretty fun. And again, the way Jeremy Adams writes characters, he's one of those writers that clearly understands the voices of each character and the way that they would interact and the way their characters like interact. Now let me ask you this again, Britt. It's like, so we're 4 issues in. Are you seeing stuff that would let you like, let's say Jeremy Adams was announced as the new Wonder Woman writer. Would you trust him, or at least give him more of like a shot?
I'd give him a shot.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So speaking of stories that is nuts, what the hell is this series?
It is.
So for those
As I
that don't
told
know,
you,
yes, there is a stop sign that says sex, but on this side over here, I had to cut it off because there's a shop that says comics and I'm gonna say corn. Okay, but
this comic is very much, again, if you watch South Park or Robot Chicken or Boondocks or anything like that, this is what this is. And
it's
mixed with Deadpool and Harley Quinn.
yeah. I mean, it's very gratuitous in terms of like the blend stuff, but I like the idea of like the hero being just as destructive as the villain, but it's like I'm like,
At least
okay.
it's better than the boys, though.
Yeah, it doesn't take that much to be better than the boys comics, Britt. Oh my god. Refer to our boys episode. But it's like, yeah, this is a rough series for me to get through, Britt. I'm like, what the hell did Robert show you?
I mean, I was just shocked, when I first saw it, but it's so funny. It's so funny to me.
Oh my gosh. There's even a sign down here that says no sex on 5 to 9. I'm like, what the hell? Curl up and die salon. Okay. This is so we're on the corner of death and sex. Okay, that's a hell of a street name. It's like, honestly, honestly, this thing doesn't really have that much of a story. It's just like, how do we shock people?
Actually, it does. Especially when you go a little bit further into it and understanding, who she is and why, she's a villain, that I would say that the story has depth. It does. It does kind of like take you out just a little bit when you go towards the very vulgarness of it. But underneath all that, and it's not that, like you have to dig deep in it, but there is a story, which is why I, liked it.
There you go. Which, yeah, it's like, it's not, let me put it this way, it's not the worst thing I've read. And it's kind of odd. That's the thing about it.
It is odd.
I'm like, the hell am I reading? It's one of those series where I'm like, okay, it's unique. Let me put it that way. It's unique. I'll say that it's unique. At least it's not the same thing over and over again. And somehow it outboyses the boys, but it's better. It's way more enjoyable than the boys. I'll give you that one. But I think that I think that's a good place to leave it, because it's like, as far as like, all right, Britta, how do you rate Green Lantern 4?
Oh, I would say that is a 8 out of 10.
Okay, I'll take that. With Bomb Queen, 7 maybe. It's
Yeah.
like, because it's not really like my thing, but it's like, okay. This is the second weird thing you've made me experience, but besides Jeepers Creepers.
Come on, Big Jeep is funny. It's entertaining. Both of them are entertaining.
Yeah, it's very funny. I can't wait to see someone lick a window in that. That'd be hilarious.
No,
The
I don't think
silence
so.
kind of tells me she does lick a window at some point.
No, it is. Well, you'll read it. You'll read it.
Oh boy, but yeah, but it's Cameron says, not gonna lie, I thought at least one of your stories would have been Loki and Cersei teaming up to start a war between Norse and Greek pantheon.
Honestly, that is a good story concept. Because we were going with romance type thing, and Immortal Beloved was really like the number one story. That's what we went with. But that concept is actually good, especially if you involve the Amazons, and make it lean more into a Wonder Woman story, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing there. Yeah.
See, even with DC and Marvel crossover, honestly, this would have been a story, even if they wanted to do villains, Loki and Cersei team up would be, honestly, it would be hilarious.
Well, we could get more Wonder Woman like content, because again, it's like you get like DC and Marvel are releasing other crossovers on their digital platforms like Shazam and Thor and like other characters. So it's a matter of time before we get the Wonder Woman crossover. Arguably, she should have been first, but at the very least, it's like, okay, at least we know for sure we're gonna get that eventually.
Right.
But yeah, but I think that's a good place to leave this episode. This was a great one. I love Thor, and we're 3.5 hours in. Interesting. I knew that when I saw the amount of slides this PowerPoint presentation had, and it's not like Britt sent me like so much information. It's just when I'm making the slides, I have to pick how much information I can put on each slide before it starts getting like really small to fit on the slide. So I'm like, eventually we'll get to 4 eventually. Well, Cameron, we did hit 4 at one point. It also blows my mind that like people like Cameron sat here for the entire 3.5 hours. I'm like, it's like when we had Jason Lewis on, he stayed on for the entire 3 hours. I'm like, my God. And then, what you guys don't know, he hung out with us afterwards. So we're like, my God. But anyway, so Brad, what stories do you want to tease us with?
So I do have a prelude to one of the Shelterverse I would say we could have it as our own like umbrella, Shelterverse, but you also have these sub stories. So this one is an Odyssey sub story, and it's a prelude. I have completed that one shot, which, yes, Jared, I will be sending it to you in the next hour or so. Then we have again Odyssey chapter 3, Shelterverse chapter 4 for the holidays, and a couple of more one shots that I have, and then I think I am going to target as a 6 chapter story.
Dope.
Which again goes into it's not so much as a spoiler. So I would say that Diana adopts a child, but it's a powerless child. So it's how can she, balance that out, and pretty much learning from Martha Kent and how she, saw Julia, raising Vanessa.
I like that. I definitely like that. That's fun. But yeah, so and as for Comics League again, back Athena, the goddess of thunder. I'll put the link in the chat, and it's in the description as well. So go ahead and back Athena, and then I'll play the trailer before I play the outro. But anyway, on that note, stay heroic, everyone. Remember, Lois Lane is as useless as a laxative, and Steve Trevor belongs in a hydraulic press. I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.
My home has been invaded, my people slaughtered, and I could not do anything to stop it. Not again. I will not lose another home, another family. I am Princess Lyra of the planet Centragon, Athena, the goddess of thunder, and this is my story.